Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. My name is Jimmy Good, and I'm your host. And joining us this week is a very special guest from Easy Allies, Mr. Brandon Jones. Brandon, how are you doing, pal?
I'm doing excellent. It's always nice to be called a very special guest. Like that makes me feel great. That'll last for days. Thank you.
Okay, but you are, and I've had the really great privilege to interview plenty of allies and talk to them on here and some other people. But before the show got started, I was like, oh man, like my heart was like racing. I was like, I feel like I'm getting on Space Mountain here. Like, let's go. Like I was
comparing me to Space Mountain no, it's too much. You got to take that back.
It's not. I'm talking about the Disney World one because guess what? That's my favorite. So.
Disney World's legit. The thing that sucks about Disney World compared to Disneyland is I've seen that one break down. I've never seen Space Mountain break down in Anaheim, but I was I think we weren't on it, but we went through the People Mover and all the lights were on and we could see people like stuck on the track. We're like, all right.
Yep. Yeah. It's a really crazy. It's like a crazy like two Mad Mouse mice put together in Disney World, like smashed there. It's like, but like Disneyland's like a toilet bowl. You look at it, just like down in circles. Yeah, see, I've researched this stuff. But anyway, so basically you're Space Mountain. But before we, get into a little bit of news, I always like to kind of give people a baseline for who our guest is. And basically that means telling us maybe some favorite movies or games or TV that you really enjoy to kind of show us your personality a little. So hit us, Brandon. Tell us your things that you love.
Favorite movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Aliens. I grew up like Spielberg, James Cameron in the 80s. And my favorite movie is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, but that's an odd pick, a deep cut. Favorite games, GoldenEye, anything Rockstar's made that wasn't Manhunt.
You're not a Manhunt fan.
MMO, not a Manhunt fan, but you can't love them all.
Yeah.
And favorite shows, Breaking Bad's probably the best show I think anybody's ever made. Big Star Trek fan, obviously big Star Wars fan as well, but. Love Buffy. Batman the Animated Series, of course, like best show ever.
Yeah. How do you feel about Batman Beyond?
I'm down with anything Batman. I love Batman Beyond. I don't think Rocksteady's going to make a Batman Beyond game. I think people that are pulling for that are going to have their heart broken over again and again. I think Batman Beyond's kind of done. I think it was just kind of a time and place, and maybe we'll get another iteration of it, but it won't look or sound anything like the old version.
Yeah, I watched a 20-minute theory video on the Batman Beyond, like the true ending of Arkham Knight, and it was like, this is compelling, could be, but at the same time, I feel like they just put it together and they're like, we aren't maybe going to do this. I still really hope it happens, but
The Return of the Joker movie ripped me in half. That I was not prepared emotionally for that movie. I was shocked. Like when that was over, I was like, oh, wow, that really got to me. That really down deep on my insides. I was not prepared for how affected I'd be.
Yeah. You never know when those movies are going to come out. DC, I feel like really does well with their animated films. Like weirdly, that's and some of their TV stuff's really good too. But I feel like Marvel could really take a page out of that book and be like, we need to make better animated films because they don't really do super well. I don't know if you've seen any the CG, like the Iron Man Captain America team up or the Iron Man Hulk movie. It's like
Planet
Netflix.
Hulk and Doctor Strange is one that's on Netflix, an animated film. But if I could pick between, as lovely as these films are, if I could have Marvel be the ones that made the dynamite animated films and we were destroying DC, the cinematic universe, I think I'd rather take movies that don't suck.
That's true. Well, I'm there's still I don't know. It depends on how Aquaman does, because obviously you follow that. You would say probably a bigger DC fan than you are a Marvel fan, because we talk about that kind of stuff here all the time. And I
grew up a DC fan. I was not. I knew about Marvel, but did not. I didn't learn about X-Men or any of that stuff until later in life.
Sure. I think my first exposure is more like Spider-Man in the 90s. That was kind of the first thing. And that was such a big deal for a while. But at the same time, we weren't talking about there was the Iron Man TV show and there's some Hulk stuff, but those were B tier. They weren't Spider-Man. They weren't, the X-Men, obviously. But yeah, it's the DC stuff. What's the last good DC film you saw? Was it Wonder Woman?
Ooh, yeah. Yep.
I was going to make it easy for you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
Did you like the course correction on Justice League, or were you like?
There's one course correction, dude. There's
no,
literally one.
I mean the whole boat. The whole.
Oh, just the movie. I like the Flash. I thought he was funny.
Okay.
Yeah, there were bits and pieces. I actually didn't. You know what's my favorite thing about the Justice League movie was when I first heard about like who the villain was. I was like, well, what? Like, why are you not like? Why don't you jump directly into Luthor and everything? You set all of that up. And I'm actually like at the end of Justice League, I was like, okay, I'll watch another one of these. I don't know how good it'll be, but like I'm down. But I was actually surprised when I went in the tie between the Amazonians and the Atlanteans. I was way into that. I thought that was really cool to focus a lot on Aquaman and Wonder Woman as like the only two that really understand what's going on, and everyone else is just kind of like, you're here because you're muscle, you're here because you're money, you're here because you run fast. It's really about us and dealing with our problems and our history. Like I thought that was cool. He was a big CG weirdo, like the bad guy. Like I didn't, I wasn't like scared of him or, especially right after Thanos. It's like, no, because I didn't see Justice League until after Infinity War. Until very recently, I finally was like, all right, let's do it. But
did you stay for after the credits?
Yes. No. Yeah. That's I'm down for that movie. Like as much as I hate Eisenberg as Luthor, such a weird Luthor.
Like I tell people, it is the most, I've never experienced a moment in my life that was such a 0 and a 10 out of 10 at the same moment, because there was Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, but I am self-proclaimed, I think I'm in the top 10 like biggest Deathstroke fans on the planet. So when I saw him, I was like, oh my God. And then like he's Lex Luthor, and I was like, oh no, God.
I mean, that's all those movies. Man of Steel. There's some moments in Man of Steel that are breathtaking, and some moments that are just some of the dumbest stuff I've ever seen. And so it's just like
I liked Zod. I feel kind of like he's not the greatest, but like there's not a really high bar for the villains in the DC universe. It's usually big gray monsters like Steppenwolf or Doomsday or things like that. It's like
a lot I love about Affleck. Really interesting take on Alfred. There's a lot to love, but overall.
We'll see. They might reboot the whole freaking thing. We'll see how Aquaman does. Because I know that you guys talked about Aquaman and Shazam, like the trailers, a little while ago. And it seems like a lot of people are souring quickly on Aquaman, which is kind of interesting to me. But I don't know how you feel about those currently right now. Are you still excited or interested in seeing either of those?
I'll give Shazam a shot. I don't think Aquaman's going to be good. And I love Jason Momoa. Like I think he's like The Rock. Like I want that guy to be in 10,000 movies. Like I want that guy to hit big. He's so passionate and so committed to everything that he does. I just wish it's just not a lot. You're talking about CG, and it's like it's just not a lot of impact for me. I just don't, care is probably the appropriate word, but like and I love Aquaman. Like I've been ever since like college, me and my friends would be like challenge ourselves, be like, you can do it, I know you can do it. Like I know you can make this character work. How? And like bringing him into it was a big step that I wouldn't have thought of. Like I was much more the traditional yellow haired, orange suited Aquaman back in the day, and I was like, you could still make that cool, but we'll see. You never know. I love to be surprised. And I'm glad they're still doing stuff, and even like weird Joker movies. Like let's make 3 Joker movies at once. Like I'll watch them all. Let's do everyone deserves a shot. I'm way down. That's what's fun. To bring it full circle about these animated movies. It's even something like Batman Ninja. I was like, okay, but I still was like loved it. Like there was just some moments I thought were really cool. Overall, it was super weird, but I love like a different take. I love Batman Noir. Batman Noir. What was it? Batman. Gotham by Gaslight.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. Yep.
So cool. Such a cool, fun thing. I think Batman leads to that a lot. A lot of people do. It's a great Batman comic where he turns into a vampire to fight Dracula. Like it's fun to just kind of do a one-off what if things. Dark Knight Returns.
I'm trying to remember. There's like a movie where it was like a bunch of like, it was like 4 or 5 shorts of like different ways people perceive Batman, and it was a bunch of different animated styles. And there was one, I don't know what the name of this thing was. I don't know if you can help me out if you remember this, but anyway, there's one where this kid, they kind of like reenact or kind of tell people what they saw, as far as Batman, and they show him as like a demon, or he's like a shadow that kind of moves around, but it's actually it's really Batman, but just the way people perceive him as a civilian would. And I was like, oh, this is cool.
2 of those. I know the animated series did an episode like that, and there's also like short film. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's kind of like the Animatrix. It's just like a bunch of what if things. Yeah,
exactly. That's why I was like, I watched that a few years ago, and I was like, this is actually pretty interesting. And I feel like the only thing you could do with like Marvel would be maybe like Spider-Man, kind of in that vein, where you kind of can tons of different versions. Noir in 2099. And all that crazy stuff.
I appreciate you having me on your Batman podcast. I'm really excited about talking about Batman for the next hour.
Exactly.
Really dive deep and just go over absolutely everything.
No, that's fine. We don't need to belabor the point, but because I know Batman is obviously a big deal for you, and I don't know. I would say that he's like, as far as our group is considered, I'd probably be the biggest Batman fan. My go-to podcast compadre, as I call him, Joe, he is the Superman to my Batman. So he is always about Superman, and he loves, you know, Clark and all that stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, but who always wins? You know, like, which is seems kind of cheap. But anyway, I want to talk to you quick about, because I knew you were going to bring up Raiders, and Raiders of the Lost Ark is a film that I have more recently just come back to, and I would easily put it, I think, as like my number 3 of all time. A lot of people say things hold up. That movie, besides like maybe 1 or 2 little special effects at the end with like the actual arc, it holds up so well, man. Like the whole thing is so good. It's like,
yeah. It's I think one of the things that I love about Raiders is it's so many different things. It's like 20 different movies at once. Like it's in an interesting way, Raiders is like a parody, you know, like it's like a director in the 80s trying to make a movie that came out like 40, 30 years earlier. And so like a lot of the decisions that they made, a lot of the styles, like just straight from Humphrey Bogart and like all these other films, like you can even do like shot for shot, and people have done it on YouTube of just like, it's this movie. Like the opening of Raiders is like another film. They were just like, I love this movie, let's just do the same intro. And yet it completely holds its own. And it's funny to look now that we're 40 years later, you know, and looking back at it at its own classic. And so many kids, or like, you know, like quote unquote kids like you and me, like people who grew up with that, they can look back at that as like a fun thing from our childhood, didn't realize at the time that we were watching something else, you know, like being remade in a way. And it's so intelligent and so educational. Like there's a lot that's really interesting about the era. Like they do the era so well, and do different cultures so well. And there's just so much to learn, and it's taken so seriously. And at the same time, there's like ghosts and zombies and, you know, snakes and like creepy stuff the kids would like. And it's just like, they just nail it, all of it. Like it's scary. Like there's still legitimate, like even you see it again and again, like there's just really, really creepy stuff. And yeah, it's, some of the effects don't hold up, but I would much rather, you know, when I look back at something from like the late 90s that is really bad CG versus something I look back at the late 80s that has like a puppet that I don't necessarily buy anymore, or makeup that doesn't really hold up, or, you know, some stunt that's just like, you know, gone wrong, I'm way more, you know, forgiving of that kind of stuff than just like some cartoony CG thing that just doesn't. You can date it. You're like 99, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
this level of lizard skin texture.
Yeah.
Whereas like just the fights and that are so cool, and the matte and painting, and you know, for all the effects. And John Williams, God, like one of the best things he's ever done.
I love it so much when I hear you, when people are like, you know, Jones, they're always asking you like, hey, who's your favorite artist? And a lot of people, I think they go right to an actual, like someone who's a painter or someone who's like a director or something like that. But you always say, what I like to say too, is it's like John Williams. And it's just like,
get out of the way, man.
It's just like, how many people can I could play you like 2 notes or 3 notes from anything he's ever done. And you'd be like, yep, I know it. Like, he's like, yep, I know that. Yeah. And it's very good. And like, it's all freaking great. Like, oh God, that guy, whew, it's too good. It's too good. I wonder if we deserve him. But yeah, I was gonna say about Raiders, one of my just absolute favorite things is just, it's a very small line, but they're talking about putting the arc on the truck for Cairo. And then he just says, what truck? And then it cuts to like them doing the chase. And it's just like, he just says, he's like, I just got out of this freaking pyramid and there's all these snakes, and now you want me to, what? I'm going, like, you know, he just gets up, he's just off, and you're like, I love you, Indy, love you so much. Like, man, that movie, those first 3, so good. And I'm hopeful for 5. Are you excited for 5?
No.
Okay.
Because that gets into another thing that I think is really fascinating, that when I really want to get critical and brutal, when I talk to like my friends from high school, and we just unapologetically, like, you know, rake things over the coals or make fun of like people trying to make good art, like, and us as content creators ourselves are like scared of the concept that we're like, do you just lose it in your 50s? Like, do you just hit a point where, like, did Kubrick realize that, and that's why he only made like 2 or 3 films like in his later years, like where you're just like, I don't have it anymore? And like The Post was great, but like clearly Spielberg's like greatest works were in, you know, some of the first things he did. Lucas, of course, just gone. Like, he just, you know, he, you know, was like, I'm gonna direct all 3 of these, and like all of them were bad. And I just wonder, like, because I really try to rack my brain and think, like, even Cameron, who like is doing really exciting stuff, like clearly like T2 Aliens, like that's just the best the guy's ever gonna get. And it's like, damn, these are all like the second or third movies all these people have ever made. You're like, bummer.
Yeah, that's why you gotta like. I am so hopeful because we had Sophia on, Sophia, Ian's friend, a few
Yeah,
weeks ago, and she's like, "Hey, who's like your favorite like directors right now?" And I said, if I really think about it, I think it's the Russo brothers doing the Marvel stuff because they took,
sure.
Captain America, and I love the first Avenger, but then they took like Winter Soldier, and then Civil War, and then Infinity War. It just kind of like kept ramping up in like craziness exponentially, and they held it together. And I'm just like, that pairing. I'm like, yeah, you guys.
I think the holding it together is my favorite thing. I was astounded when I came out of the Avengers. I was like, they did it. And like all these people were like, yeah, I didn't like this and I didn't like this. And I was like, you have to understand how bad that movie should have been. Like how off the rails that should have gone. And yeah, when they like took down the first one, when the Hulk showed up and then like the rest of them came out of the clouds, I was like, get out of here. Like I couldn't believe it's crazy. I can't remember another being like another moment like that in a comic book film where my expectations were completely blown apart. I was just like, whoa, I thought this movie was over. Like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's that part. I love it. Just like, especially in Infinity War, you get like that moment, or like it's just like Thor, Rocket, and Groot, but you feel like 1,000 people just showed up because they show up in the middle of that battlefield, and everybody's like, there's like a big tonal shift, and it's just like we're going, and it's just like it's kind of gives me that same feeling at the end of Return of the King when it all goes to hell, like they're approaching the Black Gate, and it's just Frodo's trying to get in there. It's just like Mount Doom, all this stuff. It's like it's like I can't take this. My heart, please. Raiders, and all those things. I had to bring it up with you because it's something that I've gone back to. It's just hard to imagine that was in the 80s. Like I look at it now and I'm like, I feel like if someone tried to do this today,
it's kind of timeless. Like it's dated by its like film quality. Like you can look at that and tell like, okay, that's, better than something would look had they tried to shoot that in the 70s, and had they shot it in the 90s, like they would have done a lot of like digital coloring touch-ups and stuff. So there is kind of a grittiness, but it works so well. Like when they do the map transitions, like the whole movie kind of looks like that. It is just like as parchment, kind of dusted, sandy.
I love it.
Beige, lots of beige.
Yeah, there's a lot of beige, so much beige.
Fantastic film.
Question for you: what's the last breathtaking Spielberg movie you saw? Because for me, I think it was Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, I went back and watched that, and that movie was better than I remember it. Breathtaking.
Oh, I mean, I should say really when you watch it, you're like, man, this is like a Spielberg movie. Because when I watch Ready Player One, I'm like, this could have been almost anybody.
I don't know. I remember, I remember seeing the Flintstones, the John Goodman Flintstones, and he produced that. And I remember seeing his name pop up as a producer, and I was like, is this it? Is this guy never going to make a movie? Because I'm like, what is he doing nowadays? And I think it was like from that moment where I started to realize, like, yeah, he hasn't made one of those movies that I was like, I was even disappointed. Abrams did his like Spielberg tribute, the kids and the aliens and the train that crashes.
Super 8.
It was in Super 8.
Yeah.
Like had super high expectations for that. And then that was kind of a weird, tonally. God, I don't know. Yeah, you threw me for a loop.
I'm sorry. That's okay.
I don't know.
I like to
because in this later phase of his career, I'm a big sucker for Catch Me If You Can. I really like that. I thought that was really fun, and I love how much of that is true, and like how while like the scenes obviously like him and his dad, who's Christopher Walken, who's really really great in that movie. All that's like made up, but like so much of what he did is like it's just a fun way to tell that story.
Yeah.
And I just thought everybody was really good, and I think Tom Hanks is really good in it. Great fun score, and that's like the era my parents grew up in. And so and my mom was a flight attendant, and so when I see like a lot of these parties that he's at, it just makes me think of my parents, and just kind of it's a fun embodiment of that period of time. But it's not like Munich, like these big epic stories. He just has had such a great style and so much care. I think that's the thing about Spielberg is you can tell like he didn't snooze on any of this. Like he might just get kind of too wrapped up in stuff. And I think he just like read Ready Player One and was like, yeah. And he made a movie that was like, yeah. You're like, we need to bring this down a little bit to really get into it. It's like either make something we don't care about or make something we care about. But like, this is in the middle. Like I'm interested, but like, I don't believe any of these characters. And Simon Pegg. I have a problem with people in makeup like being old and stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And for some odd reason, I feel like Marvel, back to them for just a second. Like I look at Peggy Carter in Winter Soldier, and they've been doing a lot of their like de-aging technology or aging up technology. Yeah. Some of that stuff's getting ridiculous. Where I'm like, can we just budget for that instead of like, because you can tell the prosthetics on someone unless you're going full Weta workshop. Like,
yeah.
you know?
I'm okay with it. It's just a question of degrees and consistency. Don't bounce around.
Yeah.
If you have a movie that's like they're young, they're old, they're young, they're old. It's like I'm gonna believe one and hate the other, whichever you do. I just hate when like someone's young for 98% of a movie. A Beautiful Mind is this. At the end of A Beautiful Mind, they jump like super, and they're just like, I'm an old guy now. And it's like, how on earth did you think this was gonna work? Like that I was just gonna transition to this and be like, sure. I don't see makeup at all. Like, whereas if you have a movie like something like Benjamin Button, which is like I think dated with its effects, but still like so gradual that it does kind of mess with your head. But with I think Kurt Russell's the apex of that, like in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
That's insane.
like,
That's insane. I've rewatched it like 1,000 times. It's on Netflix, and I'll rewatch the first 5 minutes and like, how the hell did they do that?
yeah. I'm like, you kind of like want to touch the screen and be like, is this what the heck's going
his
on?
cheeks? I just want to poke his cheeks.
Yeah, like Kurt, are you de-aging, man? Did they age you up for this film? Like, yeah. I wonder if we'll look at these effects from Ready Player One and be like, that's classic, like 2018. Or 2017 or whatever it was, to be like,
yeah, it doesn't seem like we'd be able to, but we will. Like, we'll definitely remember that era.
Yeah. Well, also too, it's weird. Like when you're talking about him being attached to something like the Flintstones, I think of him being attached to like Transformers, and they're like Steven Spielberg's like helping produce this or whatever. And I was like, really? And then it was like, are we sure? Like, is he really? They keep putting his name on it, but I don't know if they're just like, hey, Steven, are you want to be part of this? He's like, just put my name somewhere. Like, just send the money. Really quick,
my favorite Spielberg producing story. He produced Back to the Future, and the director wrote 1950, 43, 42. 43 is the video game. 42 is the Spielberg movie, I think, with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. And it's a really weird war film. And the guy who wrote, I can't remember his name, but the guy who wrote Back to the Future also wrote this movie. And it was Spielberg's only flop, like, to date. Like, it's the only movie he made that like really did not do well and did not meet expectations. And so this guy felt really bad. And then they go into producing Back to the Future, and so they're like really tiptoeing around Spielberg while they're making it. And they want to get Michael J. Fox. They can't do it, so they get Eric Stoltz, infamously, and Eric Stoltz is in it for like a hot second. And then they're really depressed, and Bob Gale and Zemeckis call Spielberg, and they're like, yeah, Stoltz is fine. It's just there's no chemistry with Christopher Lloyd, and it's just not working. It's not funny, and it's not working out. And Spielberg's like, wait, classic Spielberg, I don't have time to talk. Like, what's the problem? And he's like, well, we can't get Michael J. Fox. He's shooting Family Ties. And Spielberg just click. 10 minutes go by, and like Michael J. Fox's agent calls like Zemeckis, and he's like, all right, when do you need, Michael? He'll be on set on Monday. And it's just like, and I don't imagine Spielberg being like a bully, like a gangster. He just was really nice. Hi, this is Steven. What's the issue? Oh, no issue. That's great.
Yeah, that's the power that he garnered and he gained over these years of like literally forging blockbusters. Like, you look back, and I didn't know that he had like a bunch of intense stress with Jaws. I just rewatched that recently, and like,
Jaws was a nightmare.
Yeah, he said he used to sit in the boat at Universal, and he would just like sit in there. I forget the name of that. Is it Amity 1 or something like that? But whatever the boat was there, he's like, I used to just go sit in the boat on the Universal lot and just sit in there and like decompress and think about it. And I was like, I'm so sorry, buddy. Like, that's really intense, man. I appreciate it. It's a good movie. Like, it's very good.
A lot of those movies from the 80s, Cameron got greenlit on Aliens before Terminator had come out.
Oh, wow.
I think it like came out in the UK, and like some people saw it and they were like, he's really good. Like, this guy's going to be a big action director in the 80s. Get him on Aliens. And so they put him on it. And then he shot Aliens in London, and nobody knew who the hell he was in London. And so like nobody was listening to him. Like nobody, like I think his wife really had to like stick in because he was really focused on the effects. And so she had to like, get in the way of like investors meddling and people doing stuff because they knew who Ridley Scott was, but they're like, who the hell is, this guy? Same thing with Lucas when he's doing, people are like looking at Alec Guinness on the set of Star Wars, like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah. And Alec Guinness was like, I don't know, what am I doing?
He's still, until the day he died, he was like, I don't know.
So funny, the person who doesn't like Star Wars the most. Also, are you excited about 4 more Avatar sequels from James Cameron?
No.
Neither am I. Did you hear these names? They've got some weird names.
Like, I'll give them a shot, but like, why would I? That movie came out so long ago. Nothing in it really like screams sequel. And then you have this completely weird, coming from like a guy. It's not like a writing team. It's just him thinking of all these weird things. And like, he's just notorious for taking forever. And we'll see. I could totally be proven wrong. And wouldn't that be wonderful if they were all great? But because I couldn't tell you, man, if you had forced me where it could go. Like what, it's not like I don't remember anyone's name. I don't, like, and I'm one of the people that actually holds Avatar still a pretty decent film. Like, I think there's some moments in the end that I think are a great buildup. A lot of people like called it Pocahontas at the time, and I was like, yeah, like here we are telling the 500th Batman story over and over and over. It's
Sure.
like I'm totally down to to get a different take on things. And from a sci-fi perspective, I thought the whole idea of identity and these two people meeting each other across racial lines was interesting. Like you don't see that stuff a lot in movies that make that much money and like are that much about effects and stuff. But yeah, sequel, like even like 2 years later, I'd be like, okay, like I don't know. I just don't know where we're going with that, but he's got a lot of money. He can do whatever he wants.
Exactly. Well, there's going to be 4 and they're going to come out like one a year.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Spielberg, the thing is, though, when he does something kind of a little bit off the beaten path, it's like he'll do like a Tintin or something. And you're like, oh, I wouldn't expect you to do something like this. But there it is. It's fun and fine. He's not like, I'm going to make 6 Tintins. And you're like, oh, okay.
Let's make another one, though.
Oh, he does? Okay. Yeah, Tintin was fun. It wasn't that. And Peter Jackson was attached to that, too, right? That's so like weird.
The skateboarding house sequence was a little much, where the house is like rolling down the hill.
Oh yeah, I feel like Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, like Pirates 5. They were like, hey man, we're gonna do that, but we're gonna do it in real life. We're gonna move a bank around by horses. It's gonna everybody's gonna freaking love it. And it was like, no, don't. But they did it anyway. Damn it. Okay, cool. So now we have a good feeling for who you are. I think we've covered pretty much. You were like the fastest like to talk about your rundown, because usually when I tell people like, tell me like a game or movie you love, they'll just like pick one and they'll be like, let me tell you about Mass Effect. Or you're like, oh, okay, all right, let's get into it. But I love it. You just kind of went right down the list. So we know who you are. We have a lot of overlap, which is really nice too. Which it's nice, because sometimes I worry like when they like tell me about something that I know I don't like, or something I'm not as familiar with. I'm like, cool. But like with you, I'm like, yep, checking all those boxes.
I feel bad being on gaming podcasts a lot. Whenever somebody brings up a game, I'm like, wow, I've never heard of that. I always feel like a dummy. I'm just like, I wish.
There's so many games. How are you supposed like they release like 1,000 indie games a day? Like like you never. They'll be like somebody will pick something super specific. But I will say this though, I do prefer it if someone's like, I have a very specific game, versus being like, and not to trash on Fortnite people, but if they're just like, I just love Fortnite. I'm like, okay, I know what that is, but tell me about this other weird thing you mentioned, like that. Let's talk about that. But speaking of games that aren't like niche, let's talk about something kind of a big deal that happened recently, because we have some people who wanted to ask you specifically, Brandon, about this very thing. We're talking about BlizzCon.
Right.
More like Blizz controversy. I'm taking that. Did anyone take that? I'm taking it.
You got to look it up before you try to take that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's okay. I won't call the podcast that or something. IGN will come for me. But our very own Fragadin, he's got a question for you, Brandon.
Awesome.
Talking about this, speaking specifically about Diablo Immortal.
Yeah.
So this comes from Fragadin on our Discord. It says, #critical podcast. In light of the recent BlizzCon event, there has been a massive amount of backlash given from fans towards the announcement of the Diablo mobile game. While I did not watch the announcement live, I was very disappointed to hear this news, not particularly with the existence of a mobile game, but the fact that this was their major announcement during the panel, and we did not hear about the future of the main game that exists on PC and console, likely happening anyways, he says. As someone who enjoys a good mobile game, Brandon, are you excited for Diablo Immortal? Do you think this massive backlash is warranted, or are fans being a bit too entitled and unfair? Love and respect / adapt and overcome. He also wants to let you know that Boston would love to have you back for PAX East.
No.
So, yeah.
It's a beautiful town.
Yeah.
Especially because we're getting into winter, it's just like...
We've got snow here. So you could... Yeah. But anyway, are you excited about Diablo Immortal is the first question.
It's 76 degrees today, man. It's
you can come here, Brandon. Brandon, come to Minnesota. Come here. It's like 33 degrees. You can come here. It's great. It's lovely. And guess what? We don't have droughts. We don't have
how's the traffic in Minnesota?
It's not. It's way better. Okay, for quick aside, first EZA anniversary, I went and I was like, let's try to get there early. We were and I was in Anaheim because I was staying at Disneyland, because that's what you do, because that's where you guys should hold those things, for God's sakes. Anyway, I was there and I was there with my buddy Leo, and I was like, we should try to go. We should try to go now. We left at like 2 or 1, and we got there at like 5 or something. It was like ridiculous. It was like so. We were like, I can't believe it's taking this long. I was like, come on. So we don't. The traffic's not bad. We're not going to fall into the ocean. We don't have fires.
True.
Yeah,
true.
just come up here. We're gonna do PAX North. I'm gonna make PAX North happen here.
Nice.
It's gonna happen. But anyways, are you excited about Diablo Immortal?
You know, I appreciate that question actually, because there's a lot of questions to bring up. Like, it's not just about talking about, you know, Diablo or Blizzard or BlizzCon, but just there's like so many different angles. And it's fun. We talked about this recently on our podcast, and we never really talked about the game itself and whether it looks fun or not.
Yeah.
And so like, it's great. I actually, this is not kind of my jam. I'm playing, what's the Square Enix game that just came out? I can look it up because it's on my phone right now. But it's also just kind of a running around punch stuff game. Dragalia.
Oh yes, yes, I know what you're talking about.
And I was like, sure, let's try it. You know, I was like curious how the microtransactions would work, and I'm not a fan. I think there's a definite limit so far with the technology, unless you're willing to like buy peripherals and stuff, with what genres can really work on mobile. Like, I love sim type stuff. I like something where I can click on a thing, get menus, or turn-based stuff. I love Galaxy of Heroes because it's just like, yeah, you do this, or just automate it and just watch like Star Wars characters beat each other up, or there's a Marvel one, there's a DC one. But a lot of like action-y, tons of buttons, specifically like movement, where you're like constantly going to be rubbing your thumb around in circles on this pad. I just don't like to do that. That's just not a fun tactile thing. And so even if a game is like really impressive and you're like, wow, I can't believe they translated this or made this work. That's why I would just never play Fortnite. Because that just, yeah, it's just not fun for me, that type of adaptation. And I think it's just the limits of just making a screen feel good. So like, I don't know, maybe we'll get fuzzy screens in the future, or like, or maybe like, you know, it'd be crazy to think like 100, 200 years from now, like really crazy sci-fi, you know, Star Trek type stuff, where like you can maybe even have a raised screen. So if you like open certain apps, the actual screen itself would like raise in certain parts and have little buttons and you know, some like kind of smart technology or something, you know, like the what Iron Man suit's made of in Infinity War or whatever that is.
Yeah, like the nanotech and stuff. I'm just thinking you put a chip in your brain and then you just control your phone. You just like look at it and it's just doing whatever you want. You're just like,
that's probably where we're going. That's like the next stage of Alexa. She's just like, you don't have to ask me questions. I knew what you were going to think before you went to bed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, that's like the tragedy of this whole situation is like, I think there's an audience for Diablo Immortal. I think there's a way to let people know Diablo Immortal is a thing at BlizzCon. I think there's a way to let people know Diablo Immortal is a thing at BlizzCon and Diablo 4 is not. I think you could even pull that off. It's just how do you do it? Like, that's the question. And so like, I don't think the takeaway from this should be, how dare they make Diablo Immortal, or, you know, we should be mean to devs, or like, you know, Diablo's in trouble. Diablo's not in trouble. I don't think Blizzard's in trouble. I don't think BlizzCon's in trouble. Like, I think, you know, all of the parties involved will be able to survive this. It's just like, how should people have reacted to this? And what should Blizzard have realized going into this? But that's like, I can talk about this for days, man, because it's something that I'm slowly realizing from an editorial perspective. I don't know about you, you know, at CR, but like all of us at EZA, we talk about this a lot. Like, this is really kind of the angle that we're really focusing on in the industry, is like, from that announcement. And this was my you know, my thinking a lot at game trailers, as far as like game trailers as a culture, as an idea, because it was like, yeah, game trailers, I go there to watch videos, but like, who are you? What do you guys stand for? And I was just so fascinated about like, how do you announce a game? How do you manage your community? How do you launch it successfully? Like, how do you manage that era? And it's like, you'll have something like PT, which is like, what's this? I'm playing it. And then you have something like Dreams, where it's just like 6 years go by and we're still like, cool game, guys. One, you know, or like Crackdown, where you're just like, you know, and so like every case is so fascinating and different. And I just hope, while it's frustrating that a lot of people got upset over this issue, hopefully now, days, weeks later, people are able to kind of like, you know, the dust clears and like, wait, what happened, and why did we make that mistake, and what can we do in the future with BlizzCon?
Yeah. So are you excited about the actual game itself though? Like, are you going to try to play this?
I mean, it depends on when it comes out, depends on how much it is, depends. We just played Diablo 3 a couple days ago. We streamed the Switch version, and damn, that game is fun. And it's just like, it's really good on Switch, really, really fun, and just perfect. Like, that thing handheld, it's like, oh man, I could do this for a very long time. And so I could see myself, getting obsessed with something, and it would be interesting. I'm always curious of what games I could actually get a live gameplay session just at the drop of a hat. on mobile, where like I could actually be at the post office, and just like, yeah, I'm going to play this for 5 minutes while I'm in line and just jump into a party and have them be like in the middle of a raid. And I just like, whoop, just pop in and like, yeah, I'm going to join you guys for a second, then bail because it's Diablo. Who cares? Like, it's not like,
Yeah.
WoW or Final Fantasy where it's like, if I leave right before the boss fight, you can't finish the boss fight. It's like, I'm just going to make it that much easier, depending on what difficulty it's set at. And so like, I think, Diablo does make sense in a mobile environment. I think it completely passes a game, for obviously gear is a big thing. So it's just like, there's so much of how mobile works that could work really well for that system, but not the way to announce it, not the way to set it up, not the way to communicate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I jump back into Immortal myself, I wanted to know, did you put a lot of time into Diablo 3 before the Switch? And I can guess who your main class would be if I had to guess, but who did you play as?
Oh, Demon Hunter all day, man.
Yeah, I was like, you gotta play. That's Demon Hunter for sure.
The first test is there a character called Hunter in here? And if there is, it's that. And then, if not, go through the arsenal. Yeah, and if somebody's ranged or sneaky and can do backflips and stuff like. But yeah, played it on PC with a buddy one night. And really got into it. We played it like 4 or 5 hours straight, like right when it came out, and then played it a bunch on PS4. And then, but just never like I never beat it. And so that's what's fascinating is we streamed it as a group, and I jumped from level 8 to like 42 in like 2 hours with the group. And so I'm like curious. I'm like, oh, that'd be kind of fun to go back and just finish the story and just kind of see like what happens in Diablo 3 leading up to 4, because I actually have both the soundtrack to that and Reaper of Souls, and the music is really, really good.
So good
from both of those games. Reaper of Souls especially has a dynamite soundtrack, and so there's a lot I love about that series without actually knowing like how it ends.
Yeah.
So
well, you should definitely check it out. I cut together something that definitely garners a lot of love and a lot of hate, but we make these things called wish lists here, and I made one for Diablo 4, and I was kind of going through finding the cinematics and the music and stuff for it and talking about what I want to see in a sequel, and kind of like listening to that stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like really good, but nobody really talks about Diablo music. Like, it's very good. Like Blizzard, they are the John Hammond, I feel like, of the video game world. They spare literally no expense. Like, and they do it even better than John did, because he should have just paid Nedry a little more. But that's neither here nor there. But
they're very Disney.
Yes, very Disney.
They're very Disney. I think they're the Disney of the gaming world, because it's like, I mean, it's hard to draw a comparison because there's so much about gore and like, violence and war and, but like when you think of production value, when you think of how many games they've backed away from StarCraft Ghosts, that like a Warcraft RPG, like they've not RPG but adventure game, like they've started projects in Titan, and it's just like, no, we're gonna work on something else because this has to be amazing and this has to be really, really good. They're really good at like announcing said thing, considering what they just did, but at the same time, the merchandise, like there's just a lot of parallels, I think, between how they produce, and just the I think art, like obviously everything in video games is art, but specifically design and art and being able to identify characters, I think is also like a line between, like there's a lot of Disney characters that you can just spot immediately, and like I don't play Overwatch at all, and I could easily just be like McCree, Tracer, like I know these people, you can tell them, like, and any game now that like you think about Western, and like for some reason they came into shooters and they're like, boop, cowboy, and now everybody that makes a cowboy, they're like, it's another McCree, and it's like, do you know how many cowboys we've had in shooters before? But like they have a way of just coming in and being like, that's what you're gonna think of now. It's
like the quintessential design, like whatever they do is they're just like, this has to be just like like, yeah, you're totally right. The silhouettes, man. If you could tell them by the silhouette, and they definitely have that Disney quality to them. But as far as Diablo Immortal is concerned, I read this pretty interesting little IGN article today about 3 people who did it better. They talked about Bethesda, Microsoft, and Nintendo. With Bethesda and Nintendo, what they did is they're like, hey, here's like something kind of crummy, maybe not what you wanted, and here's a title card for the thing that you really want. We have no idea when it's coming out. And then Microsoft is to like, I'm a huge Gears of War fan, and they did the little Gears pop thing before Gears 5, and I was like, what's happening? Like, it's like, no. And then they showed Gears 5. I was like, like, so even if they weren't sure if Diablo 4 is or isn't in development, I think revealing it in this way, as from like a marketing perspective, it's just like, you guys are
Well,
better than this.
I'll go one step further. You know, I even think with Microsoft, with Pop, get that out of the press conference.
Yeah,
Get
that's
it
true. I don't know why I was there.
Get it out. Get it out. Well, you don't need it. You just
Cut
don't. It shouldn't be
Turn
in
the
this
tap.
room. You know, it's like there's so many things at any press conference that are not talked about. You know, like there's a list, and the vast majority of things they could talk about versus things they are talking about, the things they are is like 2% of the potential of what we could actually be discussing at this moment. And that's the big thing about, you know, our jobs. We speculate before, you know, what they're going to talk about and after, what they did and why. And so it's like you can still. I just don't see a bunch, like you said, that reaction of like all of us being like, wait, what? You know, like the Pop guy and your brain just like, oh God, no, like, what is this? And even mobile, you're like, okay, well, thank God it's at least relegated to something I'm probably gonna like not even pay attention to when it launches anyway. But it's like, what, how did this help you? Like, why did you tell us this? Like what, like we're not going to be the one that's really passing this information along, and we're not going to be the one that's probably like spending the most money on this. So like, why would you even like, you know, put yourself in danger of it soiling another announcement? Like have that be the thing. A really interesting move from Nintendo was Metroid Samus. I can't really look. One is Samus Returns and one is Return of Samus. Doing that at Treehouse after the fact. That wasn't even in the press conference. And so, and that's like a cool game. And Nintendo was still so nervous that they're like, it's just going to offset everybody's expectations. And so we're doing deliberations and we're like, so they just talked about all this stuff. What are we going to talk about? And I think like Damiani was like, wait a second, like some other cool thing is happening. And so like, imagine if it was that at Blizzard, or BlizzCon, like, it was, you just knew about it because there were posters for it and they were talking about it and they did a deep dive after, but it just wasn't, it wasn't at the keynote at all. Like it was just something that once you heard about, you weren't like, you know, in an electric chair being shaken by Blizzard, you know, being like, you know, with the eyes open, like clockwork style with the drops where they're just like, now is the time, the lights are on, this is the go, you know, this is the big event, this is the main event right here, mobile game. You're like, what? It just, those two things don't, it's not the platform for it. And so it's fascinating to me that you can take something and distort the value of it purely by when it appears. That like you could, I'm convinced that there is a way they could emerge from BlizzCon and still announce this game and have people be stoked for it. You know, like obviously you're gonna be pissed that Diablo's not there, but you can still like make a Diablo tribute video or something. You can still do something to have them show up and be like, we get it. And I think that's like one of the major things across all media in this era is these companies that are like, we get it, and companies that don't. Like companies that are very forward thinking and very honest with their audience, and companies that are just like pretending to be. And it's becoming more and more obvious when that happens. And even with the company, I think that gets it right most of the time. It's fascinating, and I hope constructive for a company like BlizzCon or Blizzard to stumble like this and they'll be like, oh, okay, we're better than this. We can, you know, we won't do this in the future.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too to like, I don't really check into this too much, but I just saw this article about their stocks dropping a little bit, and that being the biggest thing about it, and perception being reality, because really truly in this business, you screw up like that on a big stage and people are like, are you out of touch? Like, are you out of tune? Even though Blizzard still has all the money and it'll be fine. I think like they shouldn't have said anything about any of this stuff, and somebody should have come up on stage, the tribute video, and then they just say, you know what, we don't have really anything to say here today, but we just want to tell you that evil never dies, or something like that. And then be like, oh, and then they would have just like, be like, what does that even mean? And then be like, and they're like, we'll talk about it later. It's just like,
I think, what you just said, I think that would have had way more impact for me than what Bethesda showed for Elder Scrolls.
Oh my God, that's
like,
so stupid.
Just showing a logo, it's like, what? Huh? You know, it's like the second you fade to black, if you're at a press conference and you fade to black, you have to understand like the impact that has. So like, just don't fade to anything to black. Just say like, you know, we're doing some in the future. Yes, there is an Elder Scrolls in development. Yes, we're working on we're working on a game called Starfield. Yes, we are doing, you know, like that, like just saying it, people will be like, whoa. And it's like, but we'll talk about that later. You know, like that I would have gotten chill. I'm getting chills right now just thinking about that. Yeah. But again, you start up this, you know, the shot and like, oh, I'm hearing the theme again. That sounds orchestrated pretty similarly to how it was before. And I can barely see that town and logo and we're out. Like,
like I feel like those were both bad. Starfield feels like even more disingenuous because like we are working on something. Here's the logo, and you're like, great. Like at least with Elder Scrolls, you kind of have an idea, and you don't have to show more than that. Like you get people, and there's a bunch of people who are like, which town is this? But Starfield, you're like, okay, you are working on something, but you just show me that. Like, so we're just speculating. But either it just seems stupid.
they're gambling with emotions.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure,
that's
totally.
that's this game. And so it's like it's not factual. It's not, like you are I want you to tug at my emotions. You want to tug at my emotions. Like we're both here for the same thing, but it's like it's so hard to quantify really what made me feel that way, and almost impossible to forget it. Like I'll just you break my heart, I'll never forget that. Like I'll never forget that moment of like, that just wasn't like, even when Animal Crossing Switch is in my hands, I will remember that stupid trailer, and I'll remember like, like what a weird announcement. That was better than Diablo Immortal, but
it's a long, hard road, especially for Animal Crossing.
Oh yeah, fans. It's real hard, and it's 2020 is hindsight's 2020. It's so easy to look after and be like, well, this is clearly what they should have done. But can you imagine like being at the helm of something that hasn't leaked, nobody knows about, and you have just no idea. I'm sure you felt the same way. When you started CR and we started EZA, we're just like, I think this will work.
Like you're always hoping.
I think there's an audience for this, but like I just I don't know.
Yeah, well, clearly, I mean, especially for you guys, there totally is. Are you kidding me? Yeah, now you know that.
Of course. Yeah,
exactly. I was gonna say though, back to that, like that feeling. I just think of Devil May Cry 5. I mean, we're all dumb Kirbys. Basically, every human is a Kirby when it comes to media. We're black holes. We're just sucking it in when we just pass it through. We just want more and more. But I saw the Devil May Cry 5 trailer and I did not know how to feel because I was so excited about the potential for that game. And then I was getting vibes of like DMC in this trailer. So I had this like, it was consternation. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to feel right now because this is like it's I don't know what am I looking at, but I've sensed I'm like, okay, I love that you exist and I can't wait to play it. I'm like, okay, it exists, all right. I can't be too picky. I'm just happy it's there. So yeah, have you ever had that with a game where you see it and you finally you're like, there it is, and you're like, oh no, like, or you're kind of like, I'm not sure what to make of it.
Yeah, I mean, now that I'm on the opposite side of post credits on Red Dead, like I wasn't really super crazy about any of those Red Dead trailers. They were weird. Like, and and looking back on like my favorite moments from Arthur Morgan from that game and the moments they picked for the trailers, like weird. It had a weird introduction to that game. And I think it makes sense because I think that game is so many things at the same time. And so I can understand the ad company being like, where do we start? Like, how do we approach this? How do we introduce you to all these people? Yeah, I was a little nervous when I first saw that. But yeah, that's an excellent question. I don't know. And again, it's just something that I try to learn from as much as I can and try to like, remember these moments when they happen so that hopefully like you can educate people. I think that's like the greatest aspiration of our jobs is that like somebody actually listens to us and is like, oh, okay, I won't do that. And you're like,
yeah, exactly. Like with Diablo Immortal, I'm sure it'll be a fun game. Let's not kill it yet. You know what I mean? It just went out. So I hate it when people's opinions are like short and rough and like not really well thought out because not that I think it's disrespectful, but like I just want to learn more. I just want to learn. Like your position's fascinating because I got Ben Moore in my ear who's just DMC or die. He's like, this is I'm so excited for Devil May Cry 5. They're doing everything that I like. And so I love to hear dissent. I love to hear well organized, well spoken dissent of just kind of like, or even just uncertainty, just being like, yeah, I'm excited, like Animal Crossing. It's just like, yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be fantastic. I'm sure, just the moment I held that console in my hand, I was like, oh my God, can you imagine? Just me and my wife just I'm in bed, both of her Switches, just kind of like I sent you mail. It's like, I'm in fishing right now. I'll check my mail later. Like, it's like, that sounds great. And so I'm like, I know that's gonna be fantastic, but there's just so many, little birds floating around my head, just whispering all these like, terrifying possibilities. And it's like, I think we're gonna be okay. But yeah, that's true. That's a beautiful dream right there. Sitting in bed at the wife playing some Animal Crossing. That's great. But if you want dissent, just listen to me talk about Bloodborne sometime. I'll talk to the boys about that one because I got dissenting opinions, my friend. Oh yeah, that's right. Anyway,
well, I'm the guy to come after because I could see both sides of that argument.
Exactly. That's why you're the middleman, and I love that because I feel like often in my life I am that too, where I'm like, well, I can see your point of view. You get hated by everybody pretty quickly because they're just like, well, you don't completely agree with me. And you're like, I'm sorry. Yeah. You're like, that's great. Okay. Wow, Diablo just spurring so many conversations. I'm hopeful for the future though, and I really want to go to a BlizzCon. I haven't been to one. I've had a few opportunities where it's been like close, but then stuff like this happens and I personally get little apprehensive because there's some cool things they talk about there. But at the same time, I think like it's not the year, and it's never going to be like this, at least for like 10 or 20 years. But like the year they introduced Overwatch, and to like be there and be like, here you go, want to play it today? And it's like, oh my god, like, you know, that's a BlizzCon, baby. Like that's like a, it's too much, like my heart.
Which is tough, and I think that also kind of speaks to the danger zone that Blizzard is in a lot of the time, because how do you compete with that? And that's why I brought up, I thought it was interesting Sony didn't have PSX this year, because I saw the writing on the wall. They were like, we got PS5 coming up. We only got like 4 games to talk about. You know, it's like we're so clearly transitioning into like we will hang out with you again in 2019 and have a lot to chat about, just not right now. And so I like things being flexible. I'm totally fine with conventions getting bigger or smaller. Because it just happens. Like you just can't, like, I don't want, you know, games to suffer to be beholden to like having to go to all these events or if they just came out, I'm sure their fans would riot, but if they came out and were like, you know, it's gonna be smaller BlizzCon this year, we're transitioning to doing these things, or Assassin's Creed, like we're taking a year off, like that's great. That's always good news.
I want them to do that this year. Come on, Odyssey. I was like, please just take time. They're like, sorry, it was already in the cooker. It's like, we just got to move on. Well, I look at other conventions like D23 for Disney, and they're like, we're not doing this every year. We're going to do it once in a while, and it's going to be a big freaking deal. And they're just like, we come and make it.
After acquiring Marvel, like just skipping Comic-Con.
Oh my god, they're just like, whatever.
Like, we're gonna do D23, or you know, we're not gonna do Comic-Con or vice versa. You know, like, and it's nice to set those expectations ahead of time, just to know that like, don't expect something to happen. And
which, side note, every time I think of Comic-Con, now I think of just you on the train down to Comic-Con. I think, what a jolly experience. Like I'm like just sitting on the train. You're like, I'm going down to San Diego. I'm gonna go down to Comic-Con. I'm like, that's beautiful, man. One day that'll be you with Animal Crossing. You're sitting there fishing. You know, that's the dream, right? It'll happen.
That is the dream.
Nintendo takes its time. It's slow.
It's next year. It's next year. That's fine.
I was gonna say they're kind of burning through all of their like the big first party stuff. And I'm not saying that Animal Crossing isn't, but when you look at like Mario, Zelda, Smash Brothers, stuff like that, they just have to do that first.
Mario Party, you know, the usuals.
I see how Mario Party, Mario Tennis, I feel like that's a different thing. And when are they like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe? Like they just like, we'll just keep just making 8 or whatever, or just porting. That's the problem. Yeah. They porting the games. They just keep porting these games over. That's why Animal Crossing has been on the back burner. They're like, drop and freeze.
Kart is totally going to skip the Switch, isn't it? That's crazy. Because there's no reason to release Kart on Switch. To make a new one? Why? That's a waste of money.
Yeah, just
we have it. Everybody owns it already. It's fantastic. Like no one's complaining about it. Like it's that's the game sold so much on that system. It's wild. But cool.
I try to tell people, I'm like, just keep in mind, everybody, that all the things you love so dearly, they will try to cash grab everything from you. So like, just keep that in mind, because like, you know, they're all businesses at the end of the day. So if you get angry about something, it's because the business reminded you that it was a business. Like when I'm in Disney World, I'm like, this is amazing. And when one bad thing happens, I'm like, this place, how dare they? But it's like, oh wait, I paid to be here. They got me here. Like they won. They won. Like
I remember buying a memory card for the Nintendo 64 and being like, touche, Nintendo. Touche. I think it was WCW required a memory card to save your progress, and I was like, "You got me. That's good."
It was
like a cartridge game that requires a memory card that I got to pay like $10 for, $15, $20, whatever. Expansion pack, like
that freaking.
Touche.
It's like Donkey Kong 64. You want to play this game? We're gonna need a special little red box, and you're like, "What are you talking about?"
We talked about Galaxy of Heroes earlier, and like with microtransactions, like people see pop-ups and stuff, and they get so angry. And every time I see a pop-up, I'm like, "Nice try." Like I love it. It's, you know, and I don't know. It amuses me a lot because, like you're saying, it's fun to see what they'll do. Like you know, obviously, like you know, overall there can be nasty practices, but it amuses me more than anything.
Yeah. Quick question for you, because obviously you're a big Disney and Star Wars fan. Are you going to be there day one for Disney Play? Is that what it's called? The Disney streaming service?
No. I don't know if I've been day one streaming service ever. I can't think. CBS I might have been, because I like Star Trek, but Amanda's nuts. And so she's like, I'm going to be there Discovery day one. I got to see that. And it's pretty good, by the way. But very curious about season 2. But yeah, I've never really adopted that. And this is kind of comfort food. Like, it's like, that's not something where it's like, I absolutely need to be there. So many of the new things I saw on Netflix, like House of Cards the other day, I like tuned on Netflix and I was like, I wonder if there's anything to watch today. And I'm like, oh, boom, here's a whole season of a show. Great, let's do this. And I wasn't like, House of Cards comes out tomorrow. Like, I had no idea. I'm caught up on that show. I love that show. but like I just it's you and I and the rest of the people in this world are not want for like entertainment to
Yeah.
absorb. Like, and so it's like I just very rarely am like, there's nothing on or there's nothing to play. And so like I just kind of like, let stuff just kind of we were talking about Disneyland earlier, and like there's a lot of people that just know like the date that stuff comes out, the date the restaurants change their lineups,
Yeah,
like
that's
the
insane. I'm like,
date the stuff changes, like November 9th is the beginning of the holiday season. And like I love just kind of being surprised. I love like going to the park and like, what, whoa, they built this thing, where did that come from, rather than
yeah.
like reading it in a blog 6 months earlier and then just pulling my hair out in anticipation. It's like I can just take a step away and let it surprise me. It's a lot healthier, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it too. Yeah, definitely. Well, I just like watch certain like daily vloggers who like live in these places. So I'm just like, this is how I get my fix. And I'm like, oh, looks like the Christmas stuff's up. Looks pretty cool. And I'm very privileged, so I was.
This is a fun era because it's like Halloween miss.
Oh, for sure.
Like...
Yeah, especially at Disneyland. It's like, hey, you know what? We're gonna leave this nightmare before Christmas stuff up forever. Just come on. It's always Christmas or Halloween. Come on, bud.
Like some ones have the lights up, and some things pumpkins are still there, but other things are taken out. It's fine.
Right by the Christmas tree cookie is the pumpkin cookie, and they're like, we didn't change it. And they're like, it'll be fine. They'll just sell it. Don't worry about it. Yeah, what did you call it? Christmasween?
No, Hallowmas. I don't know.
Hallowmas is pretty good though too.
Hallowmas.
I like that one. Yeah, Disney. Which I do want to bring this up too, because this is another question. We do have a segment typically for questions specifically, but I figured that this is as good a time as any. Simon Anderson, he asks us, and he said, "This is for you too, Jimmy." So thank you, Simon.
Nice.
What is it about Disney that you love so much? What is it, Brandon? Come on, tell me. Come on.
Well, I got suckered in through animation. That was like my first
suckered.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's like, Disney's like a drug. It's like, when did it start for you? Like, the first one's free.
Hi, Brandon.
Yeah, for me, yeah, I'm Brandon Jones, and I like Disney. Pinocchio was a big one when I was a kid. I had Cinderella on VHS. I watched that a lot, but specifically Pinocchio, the concept of like, and that's something that's just long fascinated me. Like, that's why I love puppets, and like growing up with Kermit, like learning that like that's not a frog, it's actually a person doing that voice and manipulating him to make you believe it's something else. And I was like that's just always blown my mind ever since. And Disney owns them now. But
yep.
So yeah, but it was really Disneyland. Like I remember going there for the first time, and I remember like at that age where you see people at Disneyland. And this always fascinates me too, is like I see little kids look at Mickey and I just think like, what are you thinking? Like, what are you like, that's him? Or are you like kind of Santa Claus? Or it's like, no, I mean, I'm just seeing representations of him, but like the real him is the one on camera. Like that's someone playing Mickey Mouse. Like, how does that reality start to shape for you? And how do kids not just completely lose their minds? Like constantly, like how are our brains able to adapt to that? Just this concept of make believe and just kind of go along with it at such an early age. And I remember like when I started to realize like, wait a minute, these people at Disneyland are paid to do this. Like these people, like there are people. I remember when a Imagineer came to elementary school when I was in 5th grade, and they were designing new arcade attractions at Disney World and other places. And they were like, we just want to bounce ideas off you kids and like hear what you think. And she was like, this is Elizabeth. She's an Imagineer. And I was like, an Imagine what? And like, I remember I went up to her afterward and I was like, what do you do for a living? And she's like, I just think up attractions. And I was like, get out of here. Like, I could not believe, I remember I ran home and I was like, I know what I want to do. And so just the idea that, like to date, I think Disney, the parks are the best thing that company does, because whereas, like obviously when we talk about Marvel films and Star Wars and so much of the stuff they do animated is still so extraordinary. And obviously with, building up Pixar, but all of those things are better than any one thing I've experienced at Disneyland. But Disneyland is like costumes and performing and theater and film and special effects and set construction and, designing like every single era you can possibly imagine. Even when they do like festivals, they had like a Chinese New Year thing that they do every year where they have like the different food you can eat. And just like, it's such a fascinating journey through like every art form that exists. And, I think, yeah, when I would hang out with a lot of people when Infinity, in that little brief fun time, when I would go to like Infinity events, and they would talk a lot about like Disney magic. And that's like what employees talk about and a lot of the big fans talk about. And it seems cheesy. It seems like marketing. It seems like that thing that sets you up for just spending too much on microtransactions on Disney products. But like at the same time, it does show, like we're talking about with Blizzard and everything, that like when you put so much work into something, like you know, not to bring Rockstar Crunch into it, but it's just like it sucked to learn that before, you know, they came out. But then you play Red Dead and you're like, well, you know, like they did achieve something just absolutely mind-blowingly incredible. And so like Disney's horrible to their employees, but like it shows like what is possible, what you can do with interactive entertainment, like, you know, like doing like the Void Star Wars thing. It's just crazy. It's like really fun to be at the, you know, at the apex to see like if you actually were to funnel just an exorbitant amount of money into something and bring in people, the best people from all over the world, even like food, you know, like the chefs that come in to work at Disney World and Disneyland and all of the fun stuff that they get to work on. It's fascinating to just be a part of.
Yeah,
That's what I like about Disney. But yeah, lots of things not to like about Disney for sure. Totally understand.
Oh yeah, no, that wasn't necessarily, you know, why do we love it so much? Maybe that's the thing is I think a lot of times with certain fans, and I know I feel this way too with like even games and stuff. When you have somebody who's just like, I love this thing so much, and they kind of scream it from the rooftops every day, it's kind of like, ooh, I don't know if like you're kind of making me like it a little less, and that's on me probably. But just like I hear you talk about this one thing so much, and I think Disney fans are just so passionate that if you bring it up, it's kind of like if you were going to search for oil and you just found like the deepest well possible. Like you're just talking with a person and they're like, do you like Disney? And you're like, yeah. Like, what have I done? What have I opened up? Because you're talking about like they have the parks, they have the movies, they've got all this stuff going on all the time. And it's just so engrossing.
Yeah.
But you know, for me, you know, why I love it so much, I grew up on this stuff. I've been an addict since before I can even remember other things. My first experience in the parks was when I was 3. So
Baby.
Yeah, you too? Look at you. Well, that was nice. Well, you live in Southern California.
No, totally. Yeah.
I was like, come on, you son of a gun. I live in Minnesota. Like, but I was lucky because that was like our family vacation. We go once, maybe even twice a year, like down to Florida. And I had a hard time talking to other kids for a while about that specific thing because I'd be like, oh man, I had such a fun time in Disney. And they're like, what's that? Or they would know about it and they'd be like, I've never been, and I'm going maybe once in a lifetime. And I'm like, I'm going in like a couple of months. For the 5th time, you know, or something like that. And I was so lucky, and I didn't really realize that until I was an adult. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how much did we spend down here? But that's besides the point. I think what I love so much about it is that it is the great equalizer, because regardless, especially in Disney World, you can't pay for like the fast pass stuff. It's there for everybody, but everybody's there for the same purpose. They want to escape reality for a while and be completely sensory overloaded for like a week. And it's cool because you talk to people down there who have experienced what I would consider to be like the quote unquote Disney plight, where it's like, yeah, I talked to other people about this and they're like, you're so weird for going down here. And it's just like, you're sitting with other people and you're like, no, I get it. Like in there, you like have this moment where you're like, you're from New Jersey, but I feel like we have a kinship because they're like,
This past weekend, Amanda and I went to Disneyland on Sunday, and it was Dapper Day.
Oh,
and, for listeners that don't know what that is, in a lot of the old art that they do for Disneyland, they still do it nowadays when they'll draw like, here's what this remodel of the park is going to look like. Everyone's like in suits, and like no one wore suits. Like they did, I guess, in the 50s, but like, you know, like starting in the 70s, like, you know, like the dress attire got a lot more lax, but they would always paint this idyllic scene of what Disneyland could be, and they were never able to achieve that. The scale is just ridiculous. And so Dapper Day is kind of this attempt to like recreate that era and do obviously a tribute to 55, you know, when the park opened. And I've been to Disneyland on Dapper Day several times, but I've only dressed up for it once. And one of my favorite things about that day was not the big events, because they're like, hey, at 5 p.m., we're all going to meet at the carousel. We're going to take pictures and have a great time. It's the moments in between when you're just like walking through Frontierland and you pass a couple that just looks great. And you just like tip your hat to them. And you're like, yeah, like it's great. It's like being at Comic-Con and seeing some guy in a Batman shirt I've never seen before. And I'm like, yes, you know, like,
yes, yep,
that guy. Me and that guy could be friends. Yeah, it's such a good feeling. And yeah, you really like soak in it, especially in Disney World. You're like, I just want to go right into the deep end and stay there for 5 days. Yep. And I think that's one of the reasons I love Disneyland so much. And it's something that from a psychological perspective, that was fascinating when I started taking Amanda to Disneyland a lot. And she started looking at me and she's like, you're just a different person here. And you know, I don't know if you share this as a fellow creative content producer, but like really hard to step away and not think about work.
Yes.
And just something, I just walk in those gates and just it's gone. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
thank you. It just like forcibly, I just lobotomize myself for like 8
Yep.
hours and then it's great. Even like on the freeway down, I'm just like, woo, I start like getting excited and start calming down. And but one quick thing too that I love about Disney as well is when I started to read up on Walt. It was fascinating and inspiring as an artist, to somebody like going into film school and wanting to produce movies one day and loving animation and seeing like all of these different stages of his life, like going to make the first feature-length animated feature, and like all of his big Hollywood friends being like, "What are you doing?
Yep.
Like, dude, nobody cares. A cartoon for 2 hours, man. Like, no." And then look where we are, and like making Disneyland, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Like, he's bankrupt, and like day one sucked, and like just all these like issues that they went through, and like hearing all these horrible things that happened to him, and he just blew right through it. And obviously, there's just a lot of flaws to that man's character, but it's just kind of, we're talking about with Jaws, you know, like getting in Spielberg's head of just kind of like the frustrations of dealing with. It's like, oh, it's calming to hear about that, but like these things did not go well, and it just took this person being like, I will let this ruin me because I believe in it so much, and I don't want this thing to succeed because I want to make a ton of money. I just want to go there. I just want to build this thing. Like, and so when I think of like, you know, Walt walking around Disneyland at 5 a.m. when the sun came up in his slippers and like a, you know, just drinking coffee, he wasn't like, my empire. He was like, yay, this looks like where I grew up. You know, like he just loved the environment. He loved being, you know, around all of that, and being around creative people. And so intoxicating to think about like what he was able to achieve, and that magic era. The Tom Hanks movie, even though he's a weird Walt Disney, is really great. Is a really interesting look at you know, kind of like what his creative process. And I think it was Bambi had a really cool extra feature on the DVD, because they had again, there's been like, you know, 20 reissuings of Bambi over the years, but where they had a transcript of a story meeting that they did, and they recast everybody and did it as an audio book or something. So like you can listen to it and you can hear people playing, you know, who is his lead animator? His like main Ward Kimball and with Disney and all these other people. And you can, because Bambi is a very interesting story. There's a lot of questions of like, how do we handle humans? And you can hear that whole process of the decision making of why they did it. And it was just so cool to hear him talk about the problems that they were facing and the solutions they needed to come to, and how that story was going to work, and how malleable it was. How it wasn't just him coming in and being like, this is a story, I already wrote it, we're doing this. But like, I don't know, here's what I want to achieve. I have all these creative people around me. How can we pull it off? So cool. I mean, it's just such a fascinating guy, and I think so deserving of like everything that he pulled off.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was kind of thinking too, you know, one thing that I absolutely love doing when I'm down in Hollywood studios down there is going to see One Man's Dream. And I recommend, if anyone ever goes down there, please go do this. It's a little walk-through museum. You can kind of see a lot about Walt's life. And occasionally, they don't really do this too much anymore, but they play like a 10-minute movie about Walt's life, and he narrates it. Right now, it's like they're doing a preview for like the Nutcracker in the Four Realms or whatever. But one thing he said that really stuck with me is he lost Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think everybody should have a good hard failure when they're young. And I kind of look, you know, I'm always comparing and contrasting, but Jones, for you, I feel like in a weird way, Game Trailers was your Oswald, and now this is like your Mickey.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, which is really cool.
As far as ownership is concerned, that's why, yeah, it feels really good to have. One of the greatest benefits of Easy Allies is when we have like, you know, big multi channels on YouTube and big producers like contact us, and they're just like, I'll make all your advertising problems go away. Like, just give me Easy Allies, and just you'll make so much more money. And it's like, no, like I can say no so easily, because it doesn't matter how much money you could give us. The freedom of, you know, just having this one-on-one relationship with our community, just no filter and nobody telling us what to do, that's more valuable than anything.
Yeah.
It's, you talk about the life of Disney, and it's a bummer because we're never going to get like a really true raw Disney biography film. Because there's so many things. His smoking is like a big one. Like even in the it's what killed him. Like, and And I don't think it's something where it's just like, obviously smoking is bad and we should be mad at Walt. Like, it just was who he was. And if you know, like, as you can probably attest, and anybody, you know, that's listening to this, that's made anything at art, like, you got to have a crutch. You got to have some kind of vice, something to get you through, something that you, like a little cookie you can give yourself to be like, I worked hard and now it's me time and I have this thing. And so easy in that era to smoke like a chimney and just not realize like what repercussions that we're going to have. But do you know about his parents when they moved to LA?
I don't know if I know about that as much.
They moved to LA. He was like, me and Roy are making bank. Come to LA. We'll buy you a house. We'll set you up. You don't have to worry about anything. And he was so confident because he's like, yay, I can finally spend money on my parents. And they move out to LA and like their like heating unit breaks and kills both of them.
Oh, yes.
They had like carbon monoxide poisoning or something. So he's like, move out to LA and I'll build you a house. And the house that he bought for them killed them. And it's like, that is some crazy bio. Imagine that scene in a movie, you know, it's like, it's so affecting to me. And like, there's this one other thing that Ward Kimball himself told before he died. If you don't know Ward, like Ward designed Snow White and all, like he was very instrumental in a lot of those early animated films. Classic scene of Disney cutting a whole like reel from, not a reel, but like a whole musical number from Snow White that Ward had worked on for like 7 months.
Oh, God.
And Disney just walks into his office. He's like, hey, Ward, we're cutting it. And like walks out and Ward's like, like, and like you watch it now and you're like, oh, it's a bad scene. Yeah, I get, you know, it's like Snow White would not have been better if that was in it. But like months before he died, Walt was in a script meeting and he got into like a coughing fit for like 5 minutes. And like all the animators are just watching Walt like, and they're all like, he's my boss. I'm not gonna say anything. It's none of my business. And which you can imagine now, but especially like in this, you know, the 50s, you know, it's just like, I'm not gonna say anything. And Ward was just old enough and knew him long enough that like Walt kind of stepped away from the group and Ward came up to him, put his hand on his shoulder and was like, Walt, stop smoking. Please, for us, for everybody, please stop smoking. And Walt just looked up at him and he said, we all have our vices, and got right back to work. And you're like, oh, and again, it's just like, that's a scene, man. Like that's, I can just imagine that moment in a movie and we're never going to get that. Like, sucks because they're so protective of him. But it's like, I just think there's so much honesty that you could, you know, put into a Walt story and still like, I would love him more. You know, I'd be more infatuated to see a lot of that stuff brought to light. Yeah, he had flaws in it. To me, it makes him a more interesting person.
Well, that's the problem, though. Disney, as just for marketing, perception is reality. Like, you know, you don't want to promote anything that has flaws, or you don't want to be at the very top. His signature is the
logo of the company. You know, it's
exactly. Like his body's like immortalized everywhere. Like his statue, his visage everywhere. And you're like, oh, yeah, you don't want to have like some kid come and be like, yeah, that guy used to smoke and he killed his parents. You know, like you don't want to have that. Be like, ooh, but I get what you mean. For like us, you know, the people who just grew up with it and just kind of like creators, you know, in the same vein, to hear about these things, to see that, be like, okay, so it wasn't just like, all right, just check these boxes, Snow White, perfect, all right, Disneyland, let's go. Like, you know, it's not just like, I just did it, it's fine, no big deal. Like there are road bumps, you know, speed bumps, I should say.
Roy met with him on his deathbed and couldn't really talk to him because Walt would not stop talking about Disney World. Like, he was like, Roy was like, that's great, Walt, but you know, like maybe we can kind of talk about some other things because I'm clearly running out of time with you. And he was just staring at the ceiling, being like, gotta do this, gotta do this, gotta do this.
Yep.
So it's like just until the absolute end, he was just like, just completely talk about deep end, you know, just really.
And I freaking love Disney World so much. It's like this fascinating puzzle I'm still putting together. Like every time I go, because it's really, I always tell people, it's about with whom you travel, not where you travel. And going there with people who've never been there before, people who are veterans to it, and kind of trying to figure out what works for everybody and what you're trying to accomplish in that time and what is meaningful to you. Is going on every ride meaningful? Is sitting on a bench just enjoying the place meaningful? It's like all these things, and never having like the perfect answer. But
I'm always at an impasse. I love bringing newbies to Disneyland or people who haven't been there in a really long time, and there's always like the back and forth where it's just like, what do you want to do? And it's like, I don't care. What do you want to do? It's like, well, I want to do what's good. It's like, well, that's relative. It's like, we can, you know, like when Amanda and I go to Disneyland, like for the first 3 hours, we just go straight to California Adventure, get a beer and some popcorn, sit down, and just drink beer. Like we just like drink beer and look at like that whole harbor and that whole area, just people walking around. If there's a Pixar parade, like, oh great, you know, and like it's, you know, that would have been like paint drying, you know, if I was 10, it would have been like, come on, like clearly there's more important things to do. And so it's fun, like appreciating things. We were talking about food earlier, and it's like I'm way more cognizant of that now at a later age. It's just like, oh neat, they have this like totally random thing for just a couple of months that's delicious, and there it goes. And then like a year later, are you gonna bring that back? We're like, no, that was just for that time period. It's like, well, I'm glad I ate it, that was neat. Like yeah, so many fun things to appreciate.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, here's hoping one day we get in one of these parks together, man, because I'll just be like, you know what, man,
Well,
I will make decisions. I'll be like, let's do it.
You make a strong case for the Disneyland meetup. I mean, that's like, because that's hard for me to plan as something as the one who, you know, plans a lot of the Easy Allies events, because I'm so selfish when it comes to that. Like, obviously I want that. Obviously that's like quote unquote interesting to me and exciting, but like, I don't want, you know, I don't know how many people in, you know, your community or our communities like, oh God, more Disneyland, you know,
it's okay. There are some of us though. There's a good group of people. Here's the problem though, Jones. We did that last year, and we met in like downtown Disney. We went to the Rainforest Cafe, rest in peace. And we were having fun there. But then there was like, all right, who's coming to the parks? And like it was kind of like I was like the only one of the group going, and I'm like, I gotta go. Like I was like, it's right there. I can't just. I'm like, I love you guys so much, and I want to sit here and talk to you so much. But I was like, I paid for the day. Like I gotta really get in there. Like let's get going. So it's hard. So you gotta make sure people are committed. You know,
E3 is tough. I always try to get as many people as we can on that Friday after E3, and people are just so beat. You know, they're so tired. And
well,
and
that's because that's the weakness, Jones. I'm just telling you,
right?
I was forged in the hellfire that is Disney, and I've become stronger for it. And I tell people, they're like, Jimmy, what? You're not eating, you're barely sleeping, you're not drinking, you're walking around. What is powering you? I'm like, Walt's powering me. I don't need to stop. Like I'm just like, let's go. Like that's just me though. I'm kind of nuts. Like I said, I started when I was young.
Yeah, I got I'm just gonna talk about this later, but I can drop this now in case I don't know if you're gonna be in town or if anybody's gonna be in town. But I'm turning 40 on January 20th. I think it's a Saturday, and I'm renting a couple lanes at the bowling alley that's in downtown Disney. I think from like 6 to 8. And the lanes are just going to be for me and like, you know, family and friends, just like that. A lot of the allies will be there, but like there's a huge bar right next to it. So there's a big wide open space. So like people can just come in and hang. So like I'm going to be at like a party event thing, but like I will be there. And so like I'm going to just tell as many people as possible. It's like, hey, come on by. It's right there in downtown Disney. When I saw they were building a bowling alley, I was like, I love bowling. I love Disney.
I saw that's like your pinned tweet, right? Splitsville or whatever.
Yeah.
You're like, for my 40th birthday, I will be bowling.
Oh yeah, that's I'm just like anybody who checks me out on Twitter, I'll be there.
Okay.
So I'll pin that tweet and actually put the time in. But
I just I want to be there. I want to. That sounds amazing. Yeah, I would just be.
Speaking of Disneyland events, Mega 64 is having their game days this weekend, I think.
Oh really?
Or next weekend
in the park.
They do every year, yeah. And so if anybody's going to that, I never miss that. I go every year. Not to they have a 2-day thing. I think the first day they have like panels and stuff at one of the hotels, and then the second day they go into one of the parks. And so that's the day I go to, and they do a big photo op in front of the castle. And so I always show up and just like, you know, it's fun. Like, I'm in there somewhere. If you look at all the game days, like I'm in this massive photograph somewhere because I love those guys. And Rocco's a huge Disneyland fan. He's like you were saying, you're like, I read blogs, I listen to podcasts.
Yep.
I watch videos of people that live close by. I remember when right after I first met Rocco, he posted a Haunted Mansion blog that was just like, took me like an hour and a half to read, but it was so great. It was just like all these concepts that never came to fruition and early art. And that's my favorite ride. So it was like, I like this guy.
Yeah, I talked to Ian about this because that's, I think, his favorite ride as well. You've heard of Phantom Manor over in Disneyland Paris, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay.
The Florida one is hands down the best. That's the best Haunted Mansion in the world, no question.
Really? Okay, because I know that some people fight for I've not personally been to Phantom Manor. That one has a much more fleshed out and tied in narrative to the land and the world. It's very interesting
because it's like Western. Yeah, it's
a story about this woman who loses her it was going to be a husband on the day, but her father, he died, but he actually killed her husband, and then it's like her like sticking around the manor, but then she finally dies, and there's a horrible earthquake, and it rips everything apart, and then you're like in the Old West with like Old West ghosts and zombies and stuff. It gets real weird. Really quick.
Yeah, that's what I loved about it is the end. I remember when this was years ago, but I remember when I went on it, they had like a poker game that was just with ghosts, and so you could see the cards like actually like come off the table and into these hands that were floating in the air, and like there's like a gunslinger, and yeah, it was neat. I love that idea. I remember I got disappointed when like I'll go to like Pirates in another like town and it's like the same ride. I'm like, oh come on, like what a great opportunity. That's with the Pirates at
Shanghai.
What was it? Shanghai?
Whatever. Yeah, that place is nuts. It's so.
Oh, I want to go on that ride so bad.
Me too, so badly. Let's just let's just business right off.
That's what we should do. Yeah, we should just do
Yeah.
Shanghai like that. I remember talking to John Vignacchi from Infinity, and like right when Shanghai opened, and he and like Adam Boyes and the other guys were like, all right, how do we expense this? Like what, you know, like even in their position, you'd think that Disney would just send them, you know, or like they'd get some kind of discount. They were like, what can we do? What event can we make up? It'll justify us spending thousands and thousands of dollars to go to a theme park.
Exactly. Well, I feel like we could just make it a thing. We'll get JV in on it because I'm going to talk to him in a few weeks too, I think. But we'll just call it Getting Shanghaied, and we'll all just go as a group, and we'll just vlog the whole thing. It'll be totally fine. Everyone will be totally happy with it, and we'll probably forget to do any work because I'll just be like, oh, "Did you see that ride? Let's go on it again. It was nuts!" Like, oh my gosh.
I had been to every park for like a year, and then Hong Kong opened, and I was like, "Damn it!"
Yeah, exactly. It's like I remember seeing that. Your picture of like Tokyo Disney and Pirates was closed or something.
Yeah.
I was like,
when the first time I went to Florida, Pirates was closed, and then I went to Tokyo and Pirates was closed. And so I've since been back on Pirates in Florida, and that's the thing where I hold true to my opinions about Florida versus Anaheim, because I think it's fascinating what rides are better than others.
Yeah.
Haunted Mansion destroys the one we have in Anaheim. It makes me super jealous. I wish we had that ride. I think it's really great. The lines are better. The effects are better. The sound is better.
You guys have Hatbox.
Yeah, it's fun, but it just pound for pound, I would pick that one. The location I think is more interesting.
Sure, yeah, it's scarier.
Ours is kind of as a more of a bayou vibe, but
which by the way, I don't know if you know about this, but for their Mickey's Not So Scary party, they put like ghosts and people, actors out in front of the front lawn. I got heckled this year, which is great. So I have that. It's coming to a vlog. It was so much fun. Like those guys, those actors, let's do them all night. Anyway,
so I will concede that Florida has the better Haunted Mansion, but there's no question we have the better Pirates. I don't know what happened with the Pirates in Florida. Like,
you don't.
It's like Diet Pirates. It's so weird.
Yeah, well, the line is better because the other the Disneyland ones. But besides that, yours
and outside, just the presence of it is huge. Like, it's unmissable.
Disney World Pirates, unfortunately, when they put it in, I think it was 7 years before it went into Walt Disney World after the opening, because people, what they were doing, like they showed up and they're like, hey, yeah, where's Pirates of the Caribbean? They're like, yeah, we don't have pirates, because they thought it was too close to New Orleans. And they're like, why would people want to come Florida, Central Florida, which would be kind of similar to New Orleans in a way? We shouldn't make this. And people are like, we want pirates, we want pirates, we want pirates. And they're like, okay, or we won't do the Blue Bayou thing, but we'll do everything else except like a smaller cave scene. But yeah, you're right, that's why it's Diet Pirates. And it wasn't a big deal for a long time. I remember just walking on that ride a ton as a kid. Now it's just like the line is out the door forever. It's like, oh, Johnny Depp, how dare you? But you're totally right, Diet Pirates. I love that Matterhorn bobsled though. Ooh, I love it so much. It gives you back problems, but I get so excited. I love it. I love it more than Expedition Everest.
The shakes on Matterhorn, it just like slams you into either
side.
And you can see the turn coming. You're like, this is gonna hurt.
I love it. I'm like, maybe that's why I love the Space Mountain and Walt Disney World better, because it's more of like a Mad Mousey bobsled Matterhorn style, sitting by yourself, just kind of like wee. Like, yeah, I love it. I love racing people on Matterhorn. Happens once in a while. You can be like, hi, like you're going, and then it's like, you just, all right, bye. Especially at night. Oh, man. Anyway, sorry about that. Disney. It just brings it out of me, Brandon. I can't help it. I was going to ask you about another comparison. Jungle Cruise. How about that? I mean, pretty similar in both, you know?
Yeah, I don't remember my hot take on that one. I don't think that was a contentious. I think that was neck and neck.
I love that it's right next to Indiana Jones. So they always typically make one Indiana Jones joke, and I love that it's so close to Indy. Like, I enjoy that. I'm like, that's a good little tie-in. Yeah, Jungle Cruise or Jingle Cruise. You hate the Jingle Cruise though, I've heard.
That's just sloppy. And they didn't do it this last year.
Oh, so they didn't at Disneyland. Nice. Okay. Maybe that's Walt Disney World. Yeah, that's interesting. How about Nightmare Before Christmas? We're talking about Haunted Mansion. I just have to.
It's amazing.
Okay, you love it. Okay.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about that is the Elfman music, which is
Yeah.
like such a great that intro is so fun. I mean, going down into the elevator, like just the way that they updated that, and it's become a tradition now. That's really fun. I
Yeah.
know, like I think like Huber hates it because he's like, I think Huber said he hated it one year. I was like, what? I'm like, why do you hate that? It's just so fascinating compared to the original. He's like, well, I only go to Disneyland at Christmas every year, so that's the only version I see. And I'm like, well, that's your fault, Huber.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not
Yeah.
making the time to go see that ride.
Well, he's always, and then he'll be like, "Well, it costs so much." I'm like, "Man, just don't like one or two games. Just be like, you know what? It's all
Yeah.
right. I'm just gonna take a day or two at Disney instead. Just like, just make the commitment. It's
It was
okay."
funny. It was funny when like Amanda and I had our first like, real, business financial meeting to discuss like, our budget. And we're just looking at things like, okay, do we need this? Categorizing like what do we need? What do we like to have and what's expendable? And she was like, and like Disneyland, can we and I'm like, let's make one thing very clear. That number is never ever going to go down. If you're going to come at me and tell me that we can't have that subscription every year, these are major changes that need to happen in our lifestyle
You're
to
like, I
open
guess
that
we
back
just
up.
don't have bread anymore, sweetie.
Because I can't,
It's
yeah,
like, we're done.
because
We're
there's
cutting it
no way.
out.
No
Yeah.
way.
Oh, I love it. Well, we're cut from the same cloth then. I felt like for a while there was a pass that had both coasts in mind. I don't know. It might have been a while ago where you could be like, I'm buying an annual pass for both Florida and California. Maybe I'm nuts.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's the
don't
dream.
know.
That's the dream. Okay. Well, all right, Brandon. We've been jawing around here for a little bit. Let's move into another segment of the show so we can get closer to the end here because you're busy man. I'm busy man. We're busy men.
Yeah.
We're gonna move into the segment of the show that we like to call Time Killers. Now, in Time Killers, we talk about the games we've been playing, movies we've been watching, TV shows we've been viewing. Brandon, hit me with it. What you been killing time with, so to speak?
Oh, Red Dead's just lighting fire to my entire schedule and lifestyle. Yeah, Red Dead's a time killer for sure.
Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing about Red Dead is I'm at the point where I'm doing just these extremely innocuous activities, just really, just like it's at that point you're just bleeding the game dry, like you're the last bit of drop of juice from the orange, like, and you're just it's funny to look at like the game's options and take a deep breath and be like, am I done?
Yeah.
Like, what is there anything else here? Knowing that you're not going to like 100% something, but just kind of like I had that with God of War and Spider-Man. You're like, that's what I think is actually great about Spider-Man is it's like less stressful to do all of it. Like I think I really got to the point with Spider-Man where I'm like, I don't think there's anything left to do. And I think I'm like, got the platinum. I think I can wrap it up. With Red Dead, like there's just no way I'm going to hit 100%. So just I'm constantly checking with myself, like, okay, this tier of challenges, is a little extreme. Do I really want to like, try to repeat that activity or try to get that thing? And then this whole time I'm running around the map, just scanning animals and doing extra stuff. I keep getting surprised. Stuff keeps popping up and I keep meeting strangers and keep like seeing just random events happen and random gang encounters are really great. It's fun to hang out in gang territory and just piss them off and stumble across their camps. And so yeah, that is just super intense time killer. And it's scary to look at like, Hitman's coming up pretty soon. Just Cause at the beginning of December.
Yes.
Odyssey.
Yes. Thank you.
Odyssey just looks incredible. I didn't play Origins, but like Odyssey really looks like something that's rough to miss. And so it's like I'm at the precipice of a bunch of other potential time killers. So
yeah, Odyssey's
the threat
good.
is real.
It's hard. Yeah. It's difficult because like I want to recommend everybody watching this. Please go watch Brandon's Red Dead Redemption 2 review. I have not watched it. I will say that because
neither is Huber. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say because I do when I'm like working on a review. Sometimes I put out like a review in progress. I'm like, this is gonna take a while. And between that, Odyssey, and Dragon Quest XI, I was like, why did I do this? And so I've got like these 3 massive RPGs that I'm like, but the first thing I do when I'm done with one of my reviews, honestly, especially for games, I go right to you guys and I'm like, all right. And then I love it because like with Spider-Man, I watched your review and I was like, I felt pretty good about mine. And then I like watch yours, I was like, yeah, he cut that really freaking well. And then like when the number comes up and I was like, we're in accordance. Like, I'm like, yes, like thank God. Like, because you feel like sometimes you're just like sheltered off and you're like, I think it's this. And like, not that we're subjecting ourselves something that is subjective to a numerical value, but It's just nice when you see someone you look up to and you're just like, oh, okay. I guess we could shake hands and be like, you're right. Like, you're like, okay, like
validation, because it's a scary thing to be yeah, just by yourself in this world, and just like you can't really like talk to anybody about it yet. I'm still there because like I think only Huber has really like finished the story in Red Dead, and so there's so much I want to talk about at the end of that game, and I just can't. Even for Huber, who's finished it, I was like, "Have you done this?" And he's like, "No," and I'm like, "Okay, go do this, and then give me a call." Like some stuff will happen, and I just want to hear your reaction to that. And so yeah, it's maddening to not be able to like share that or because there's a lot of dissenting opinion. There's a lot of people giving up on Red Dead. There's a lot of people that don't like it. A lot of people are not a fan of the controls. Don't are like, where's the story going? And I love those takes. But yeah, it's such a good feeling when somebody's like, oh yeah, that's I'm way into that as well.
I wish I could be on that spoiler mode. That sounds amazing. You guys, it'll be a fun time when that finally happens. It'll just be like,
Yeah,
oh,
they're gonna have to shut me up. Man, I was thinking about it the other day. It's like that thing's gonna be 3 hours long.
that'll be
It's just
great.
just so much I want to talk about, and I really want to take the gloves off. And it's like I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I've done because I think I'm gonna put more time into that game than most of the other allies that they just won't have the time to see. And there's a lot of really fascinating stuff. One, one thing I noticed today, man, talk about time sync. When you go get bounties and you bring them back into town, they get hung. Like, so like if you go back to the town, like a lot of towns have nooses. I think Strawberry's got one, Rhodes has one. I don't know if Valentine has one, but like if you go back at a later date, like that guy will be up in the noose and they'll
Yes.
like talk about his crimes, and like a crowd will be up and they'll just really unceremoniously yoink and then like the crowd will disperse and he'll just be hanging there. And then I don't know if it was for a specific character, but I was like walking by the church in Rhodes and there was a priest doing a funeral, like Eleanor Rigby style, because like no one was there. And it was just
Whoa.
him by himself, like giving a eulogy to this guy who was a really hardened criminal. And I don't know if it was for a specific person I had brought back, or if it was just like, it could be anybody in that grave. It's just the idea of what do you say about someone who is a horrible criminal once they're dead? And what, imagine being that guy who has to say something because you're like, I'm doing this in the face of God. Like I have to account for this man somehow. And it was like super optional. Didn't even pop up as like a white blip on the mini map. It was just like, this is just happening. And I didn't listen to the whole thing. Like I was monologuing and I'm like, I got stuff to sell. I'm going to leave. So it's like walking down the trail and hearing his voice like slowly go away as I was walking away. Just like, damn, I must be 120 hours into that game. Still, it's like, never seen that before.
That's so
that
cool.
that is a time annihilator.
I just wish you could tip your hat to the person because, like, the last guy I brought in, he gave me such a hassle, and I was just like, you know what, buddy? I was thinking about letting you go, and at one point, I like left because I was like, are you gonna bring me in or are you gonna let me go? And then I let him go, and he's like, oh, he's giving us clemency, and then it was like, you failed the mission. I was like, oh, that kind of sucks because it was like I felt like it was my choice, but then it was like, no,
Yeah.
you have to bring him in, and there's gonna be things that happen, and you got to do this. But then after that point, I was like, screw you, dude! Like you're hanging from the gallows. Like I want to be there at that show and be like, yep, I remember you. You tried to get away like 2 or 3 times. I'm like, nope, you're here. You're here now, buddy.
It's interesting. There's so many. The systems are so deep in that game that when you find those walls, when you find that part where you're like, well, I want to make this decision, and they're like, that's where we stopped. We didn't go that far to give you that ability. And then like you can like I would get frustrated by those things and then think, well, wait, no one's ever done that. Like that's deeper as far as random NPC character interaction than I've ever played in a game. So for me to be like, they didn't do step 8, it's like, disingenuous because just like they did 1 through 7 and that's amazing,
Yep.
and it's cool that you get to that point where you start to think, how deep could this rabbit hole go? Like how far could I go with this one character? And I think a lot of where they could grow it, and I've talked with Huber about this, is that back end is like, when I leave, I want to say goodbye. Or one thing we talked about is you give money to a lot of people in that game, or you're given the option to be like, hey, let me help you out. And the game decides the amount for you. And I think it'd be interesting if you could decide, no, I would give these people a lot of money.
Yeah.
Or like, no, it's like $20. No. Like give them 5. That's good enough. And maybe their reaction will change depending on how much you do it. But
yeah, that would be cool.
Those are Rockstar games. Like your brain starts to swim because it's not it's not something of like, well, hopefully next gen we'll be able to do this. It's like, we could probably do it now. It's just a question of like what they really thought was important to focus on and what maybe we'll get next time.
Yeah, well, I'm really hoping for that because I had a pretty game-breaking moment where I tied up a gun store owner for a very, very poignant reason after a little like kind of story beat thing. I took him in my arms, Brandon, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna deliver this guy to justice. And I'm like running across the street to the sheriff's office. Dude disappears in my arms.
No.
Like, and I was like, and then I was like, what? what just happened here? And I was like, and there's like the gunsmith is closed for a while, and I was like, okay, all right, I get it. The last step, they're like, you can't just bring this guy to justice yourself. And I was like,
Yeah.
yay, all right. So you probably know what I'm talking about. And I was just like, okay, well, that's all right. Stuff happens. You know?
And there's times where you can't pull a gun in camp. There's some shops you can't pull a gun, and there's some people you can't rob. So like it's interesting to see the game be like, no. Like
Arthur's like, nope, you can't.
This is us. Like in a lot of ways, we want you to tell a story. Now we're telling the story, and we're deciding, no, not here. But at the same time, a lot of people, one of the frustrations for that game is a lot of people are like, I get so stressed being in any sort of interaction that am I going to shoot this guy? Am I going to, like I'm not that comfortable with the controls that I can just like waltz through the game. And it's hard for me to think of that because, and I'm not like patting myself on the back, but like I've put so many hours into it that I'm very comfortable with like how objects are manipulated, how to search for things. One thing that like I didn't notice until after credits that I was like, right, is like if you go up to an object and there's several objects in the area, if you hit R1 and L1, you'll toggle through them. So like,
cool.
So like if you're like, no, the map, you're like, not the cigarettes, the map, it's like if you look and there's little dots beneath the object that you're examining, it'll say like, there's a lot going on here. You can just kind of cycle through them. And I was like, didn't notice that.
I didn't know you could brush your horse while you're on your horse. You taught me that.
I didn't know that either.
You taught me that, and I taught it to my friends. So I want you to know you're making an impact.
You can feed them too. You can do that from the, like anybody complaining about like feeding the horse, like you can do it so quick. You go to the second wheel and it's just left and right. Left is food, right is brushing. It takes, 20 seconds.
Reminds me,
then you don't have to do it again for 4 hours.
After a major story beat, something really bad happened. I named my horse is the Ardennes or whatever, the one you get near the beginning. It's one of the ones you can sell out for your Shire or whatever. You can pick one. And I named it Despair because I love Darksiders. I was like, I'll be death. This is Despair. And I come back after this big story thing. Despair has not only changed colors, but also breeds and is not the right stats. And I was like,
that happened to me in the original Red Dead.
And I was like, it felt like a stab because like there are horses that were honestly
heartbreaking, man.
Horses that are better stats wise and stuff. I was like, no, Despair's Desi. I love Desi.
My horse.
She's a big old horse and she gets the job done. She doesn't get scared. And now she's just gone, man. I was just like, like, you kidding me. But stuff happens. We soldier on. Quick question for you. What's your aim assist like? Do you have any aim assist at all?
I mean, there's the lock on, right? Like I stick to that. Did you turn that off?
I turned it all the way off.
Wow.
And it is very difficult. It's like I felt like I was like in a real tiny gunfight.
If you're not using Deadeye, I couldn't hit anybody in that game.
I use Deadeye a lot, but in like the regular gunfights, even I'm just like. I do like that it is a circle that turns into a dot because in the games, I've told people this before. I get it that Rockstar thinks it's like a bullet is a bullet and you shoot it, it's a dot. But like not everyone should be like a freaking amazing marksman. Like, day one, you like hand somebody a gun and they're like, perfect, I can shoot anything at any distance because it's a dot. It's like, no, it's a spread. Like, like, nope. So turning the aim assist off, which I did it because I thought I'd need it for multiplayer, but I think my buddies are saying, and it's been a while since GTA Online, I think they still have aim assist in those.
Correct.
Because I was thinking, like, what if they just turn that off and everyone gets there and they're all just like, and I'm just like, bam, 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 bam. Like, ha, ha, ha. But I think I just made it harder on myself, honestly.
It's less about, because they have lock on in GTA Online, it's more about like what weapon you have, timing your reloads, finding cover, but like if you're out in the open, like one of you is going to die in 3 seconds. Like it's not a question. It's gonna be interesting to see. A lot of people complain about the gunplay in Rockstar games. I don't think they're wrong because I can't speak to somebody's style gameplay, but I've never had a problem. Like even going from like GTA 4 to GTA 5, a lot of people were like so much better. And I was like, I don't see what's necessarily so much better about it. But
I guess
I just think it's fine. Like it's never.
It's never been super good. I think it's the lack of being compelling. I guess for me, like I'm like Gears of War. Like I said, I'm a big fan of that. So like that is like the third person cover based standard for me. And so like I think about that game where that's like the only thing it does. Like it's like this is we shoot. And you get in cover and it's like you always know when you're in cover, when you're not in cover, like you slide into cover. Like this is a little more wonky, like you get by a rock and sometimes you'll be on the rock and sometimes you accidentally step on top of the rock, like even without pressing the jump button. And I'm like, oh my god, like so I feel like the shooting has gotten a little bit better, But because Rockstar sells so well, like you guys were talking about the podcast recently, it's just like, well, why would they have to change it? They're like,
if it ain't broke, yeah,
if it ain't broke, why would we change anything? Like, it's just like still making tons of money. Like, don't worry about it.
When you think about like an environment in Gears, it's like you walk into a plaza and you might get the vibe that like, this plaza's destroyed, but maybe they had parades here one day, or maybe some politician made a speech on the staircase of that giant building, or maybe like there was like a restaurant here, or people would go shopping in this area. But like this level was designed for a shootout. Like
exactly.
Like every wall, every surface, the range between things, visibility. It's like it all factors into, can I shoot things and from what perspective? And like you take any sort of slice of anything in GTA, and it's like this is being repurposed for multiple different types of activities. Just walking through on a horse, walking through on yourself, like vaulting over small objects, climbing up on things that you can't do in Gears. I just think, realism, I think, just takes center stage for everything that they do. And if something else in the game has to suffer for it, they're like, we just need, because a lot of people are like, you move really slowly. It's like you also move a lot more realistically, body movement, than a lot of other games. It's not as like Twitch based. So like a lot of people coming from, like you say, primarily, like very popular shooters, that admittedly do it way better than Rockstar does. It's like, I don't think they're trying to.
Yeah. That's true. Well, I mean, you look at even like Uncharted, which like some people, I really enjoy that franchise. So I wouldn't say that shooting is super good. And again, you're like in an area where it's just for shootouts. It'd just be kind of cool once in a while to see them like, when you're doing like any bank job or something, if they're just like, all right, guys, let's just like really nail this part home. Like there's definitely, you're going to be trying to take cover in here and be like, we're going to get this. Yeah.
And I the other thing too, is like, I've played so much GTA 4 and Red Dead and GTA 5 and online and now RDR2. And like, so like, I'm just used to it, I think. Like it's hard for me to criticize it because I'm like, I've just grown so comfortable with how they do things that it's hard to step back and compare it to a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. I still get through it. I probably should turn the aim assist back on. I just feel like it's cheating at this point because like I want to be involved. Like I don't want it to be like pop up shoot. I want to be like, my guy might be like, oh my gosh, like in a moment be like, this is not going super well. Or other times I'm like, yeah, that slow-mo kill, that was all me, baby. Like
it doesn't have aim assist. Hitman.
There you go.
You want to test your skills.
The problem with that game is that like every person I kill, they're like negative 300 points, and they're like, it wasn't the target, and I'm like, but he got in my way, man. And I get that I'm the hitman, but at the same time, can I have just like fun with a level without you making me feel bad? Can we play like arcade mode? How many people can I kill? Because sometimes I go through and I'm like, it's like negative 20,000 points. I'm like, oh my gosh, fire me now, man. I'm like the worst hitman. Like, oh man, I'm sorry, my silver ballers are just gathering rust somewhere. They're like, oh, use this pencil, and I'm like, okay, I'll use the pencil. I love you, Hitman. I do enjoy Hitman. I do. I think Splinter Cell is the closest thing for me. Like I really dig Splinter Cell. Something about Splinter Cell, man. Even the latest one, I went back and played that, even though the whole Ironside debacle with the voice actor and all of that, still a good game. You should check it out.
Double Agent and Chaos Theory were fantastic. Specifically Double Agent was really fascinating. That story is really cool. I dug a lot of those missions.
That was like one of my first was it 360 games, and I remember thinking this is too complex for me. And this was like I was like pretty young teenager at the time, and it was like I got that. I was like one of the first. I was like, what is that? Like, oh my gosh, what's this story? I was like, this is way too much for me. I was like, okay, but then like Conviction came around, and that's a little more arcadey. But I was like, ooh, I like this. And then they had such good co-op in those games. If you guys ever co-op in Conviction and Blacklist, my God, so much fun. Please go play it. It's so good. So good. Did you ever play any co-op in those games, Brandon?
Well, Pandora Tomorrow was the first one that had the crazy multiplayer.
Oh, yeah.
That was so cool. Like just being, having like a ton of firepower versus me, like having smoke bombs and I can climb on stuff and sneak up behind you. Like I love that kind of, not necessarily asymmetrical, but just kind of like, the sides are very unique and different. I don't know if you ever played the multiplayer that was in Arkham Origins, where you were Batman and Robin versus a bunch of soldiers.
I think a little bit, because I was like, I'm Batman. Like I got Batman.
Swooping down as Batman and snagging a guy behind a guy. So like you and someone else are like right next to each other, then you turn to him and he's gone. And like that, like doing that in multiplayer, even just once, was so cool. And like, it was a very fun feeling to like actually be Batman, because you get to a point with the AI in Arkham games, you're just like, these guys are all dumb. Like I'm so confident I can do this and sneak past him, because they just very easily walk right into traps. But if you grab like an actual human being that knows better, that shouldn't like walk in front of that hole in the roof that he knows I'm going to come flying through, like,
Yep.
Good stuff. Stealth is fun. multiplayer.
Those guys who scan the gargoyles. I hate those guys so much. They're always scanning
Yeah.
gargoyles. They're like, "Hey, we found you." I'm like, "Oh, come on."
The
guys."
jammers are the worst. Finding where the jammers are,
And they have that. I think also in Spider-Man. I was like I think they have like jammers, don't they? I think they do if I remember
maybe.
correctly. I might be wrong. I feel like there was something like a radio jammer trying to throw you off. Anyway, those guys, I hate those guys too. It's just like because I rely way too much on the detective vision in those Arkham games, and so they're like, we're taking that away from you, and I'm like, I'm blind, like I can't see anything, and it's like, go get that guy, and I'm like, okay, I will, and they're like, good luck with that. Like, yeah, everybody should have a jammer. That's how you beat Batman. Everybody's got jammers. Yeah, I figured it out. Riddler and Joker and everybody. Yeah. You've been killing time with that. For me, it's not necessarily. I've been playing a lot of Red Dead Redemption 2 as well, because like I've been playing some Dragon Quest 11, and I've been trying to play Odyssey, and it's weird to jump between Red Dead and Odyssey because I'm like, well, these horse mechanics in Odyssey could really use some work. I'm like, that's because the horse I can whistle anytime and it just appears behind me, and I'm like, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
So, but that one's so much more of like. I don't want to say it's because they're both RPGs, but this is more of like a traditional one where it's like leveling, and that gets a little annoying sometimes because like you want to progress in the story, and in Red Dead you go with the story anytime you want, just go. But this one's like, okay, this thing's like 5 levels higher than you, and you're not going to do any damage to them, so try to kick them off a cliff or hope they fall off something, and that's how you beat the level or like the quest. And it's like, I just want to move forward because this game is massive. And yeah, but it's still fun. I still enjoy it because you can see I'm an Assassin's Creed fan.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm just hoping one day they're gonna take a break from it. I've heard about the Viking one they might do, that feudal Japan. Once we get some of these other games out of the way, they'll circle back around. Ubisoft will be like, and now it's our turn to do it. Yeah. Even though Ghost of Tsushima is gonna be like the Red Dead of like samurai, I think. I'm hoping. I look at that and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what this is gonna be. It's like deliberate and slow. I'm like, yeah, but I watched Christopher Robin recently, and I don't know if you saw that, Jones.
I did not.
No. Do you have an affinity for Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah, my brother is named Christopher, and so he had like a natural attachment to Christopher Robin and a lot of that story growing up. And I appreciate it. Amanda's actually a big fan. My mother and father-in-law call each other Eeyore, and he calls her. Wait, she calls him. I can't remember. Damn it, I lost it. Like maybe I don't remember. I don't remember what character she is, but she gets lots of like Eeyore merch yeah, I'm sure that movie will destroy me. I'm sure there's like a lot of strong feels.
Yeah, there's a few times they play like piano versions or melodies of like the Winnie the Pooh theme, just like kind of in the background for something. And it's like, and like
I'm a sucker for that. Just like dropping a theme in. And,
it's just like, but it's not like it cuts. It's just like kind of in the background when they're talking about something, and it's just
the more subtle the better. Just even a couple notes. Even like when somebody will like start to play a theme and then do something else, you're like, I see what you did there.
And if you liked Hook, a lot of people compare it to Hook. I honestly liked it better. I think I could watch Ewan McGregor do almost anything and be entertained because I think he's an incredible actor. But then to have the characterization of Winnie the Pooh, who voiced by Jim Cummings, who also does Tigger, which you guys should check out. James Earl Taylor does a show. He did a podcast with him recently, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're incredible. But it's really sad because you compare him to the other actors that they got for these other roles, which are fine, but they have like Brad Garrett for Eeyore, and like I guess on paper it makes sense, but for me it's like it's too much like of like the low gravelly like I don't know, just the other ones aren't as good, but Pooh, man, like him in the real world is just a real freaking treat. Like he's just commenting on everything and just breaking things, and you're just like, this is so adorable. And you just like watch him.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of buzz in the VO community because it would be amazing if Jim was nominated for Best Actor, and which he
deserves it.
She totally could be. You know what I mean? Like that is possible. There's no reason that kind of stuff shouldn't happen. But it's just like these movies are so rarely that impactful that like no one's going to get nominated for The Incredibles. Nobody's going to get nominated. You know, like in a like Best Actor, like you know, Bradley Cooper's not going to get nominated for Rocket. Like
he should.
Like these are great performances, but like they just don't affect people as much as seeing something in live action. And it's neat that we're finally getting in a lot of press junkets. And I think Ewan McGregor even commented on this. Jim Cummings got top billing over Ewan McGregor, and Ewan McGregor was like, yes, like, please get this man and his work, you know, how devoted he is to his character and how special it is that we got him, you know, to be in this. It's funny, I'm not a big Kingdom Hearts fan, but that's one thing that a lot of Disney fans that are just like nuts that I don't like Kingdom Hearts, that are just like, yeah, but, and they always bring up these things. And the one that's like a low blow, and I know, is they're like, yeah, but it's so many of these amazing actors and actresses like have come back to play, you know, these roles, and how special is that? And like, it's very cool.
It's very special. They should just friggin' you know what, Academy, just make a VO award. All right, just do it. Or just like, if
but that's the thing, is like, if they are like, that's we're talking like popular movies, like an award this year. Sure, so it's like, if you know, if they were like, all right, here's your little side award, and it's like, no, I want the big one. I want the one that Denzel Washington's going to be up for, you know, like, I want the one that Tom Hanks won. I want that one. You know, I want you to recognize that I brought the same level of quality and emotional impact to this as someone did, you know, if they were, we'll see. Yeah. Might not be now, but maybe someday in the future.
Maybe one day. I would appreciate that too. It would I think it'd be kind of cool to just, even if we, you know, better than nothing, it would just be nice to nominate more people who are in that group, that industry, that really make up a lot of like the characters we love. And again, Andy Serkis is like the one. He's like not just a voice actor, but he's like an actor. And they're like, we'll never give you anything because you keep like doing green screen and mocap. And it's like, he's incredible. He's so good. And it's just like, nope, sorry about that. We need to see his face. It's like, you're killing me. The Academy. The last good year was 2003. That's right. Return of the King swept it. It was great. Loved just to play that Lord of the Rings music all night. Howard Shore, just like, they're just grabbing all the awards. Remember one of those years, like Beautiful Mind was up for best makeup, because we were talking about that earlier. I was like, or against Harry Potter or something else. I was like, you are really scraping that barrel. There's like, we got to find other people to nominate. But anyway, I digress about this. But Jim Cummings, speaking of him, he's also, I think he does the voice for Pooh down at the parks. And he will actually do like your wake up call. But it's really weird, because in the past they used to do Mickey Mouse, who would do it, be like, hi pal. And you'd be like, oh, cool, Mick. But like this one, Winnie's like talking to you about coming to the Walt Disney World Resort. And it's like a weird like disconnect that Winnie's like talking to you. You're already on property. And he's like, oh, we're going to have so much fun at the Walt Disney World Resort. And I'm like, they needed better like copy for this, because like he's not like, come to the park, we'll have fun. It's just like, come spend some money. And it's just like it's so weird to hear that at like
the line. They found
6:30 in the morning. I'm like, what is it, Pooh? What is it? It's just like, it's not like it's a blustery day in the 100-acre wood. It's just like, come to the Walt Disney World Resort. It's like, okay, Pooh.
Have you updated your Disneyland app yet? And like, Pooh, not now, Pooh, not now.
He's like, get your passes. Yeah.
It's like, I think a parallel in games are when characters talk about buttons, where characters like press the X button. You're like, what's the X button? What?
Yeah.
Like, what?
It's very, or it'd be like, press L2 to do this, and you're like, we were just having a conversation. What do you
L2 mean to you?
Yeah, what? Yeah, because it's just like, oh yeah, I also have to be the tutorial. You know, it's like, oh yeah, I'm playing a game.
But we're one game that is incredible. It's one of the greats. Is Metal Gear Solid does that all over the place. You know, like they mention buttons, and they tell you specifically how to go through your inventory, and it just never quite breaks the immersion. But it's always a bit odd.
Yeah, dissenting opinions again. Brandon, if you have me out there, it'll be a bloodbath. Anyway, I still have to go through. I will be honest, I have not played through all of Metal Gear Solid 1, so I can't attest to it. I can't speak here.
I own and never finished MGS2, so it happens.
Okay, that's all right. I played a little bit of I played through Ground Zeroes and MGS5, which I know are not the same, but like I was playing through it and I was like, I just want an open world Splinter Cell game. I was like, I feel like Ubisoft might have a better handle on this right now.
Yeah, especially if Ghost Recon. It's like, it seems like that's something they want to do, you know.
It's gonna happen. Ironside was there. Except I didn't buy that DLC because I just watched the little. I don't know if you saw anything about it, but he even makes a reference to Snake. I love that little bit. I was just like, oh, that's so freaking funny. And he's just like, I'm the only one. He's just like this realization as a video game character. He's like, the last spy left. Okay, like I love it. All right, Brandon, let's move into the last segment of the show here, called Community Feedback and Questions. And I asked people, what game or movie do they love unapologetically? Do you have any? I mean, we talked about a ton of them. Is there one where you're just like, here it is, I don't care what people say?
Do I love unapologetically?
Yeah.
I think of something that I love that people don't like, because a lot of the stuff that I love that I'm unapologetic for. Like, it's just, I admit that it's bad, but like just really stupid comedies and stuff, like Ace Ventura or like Biodome, or just something. I'm like, I'm not saying it's a good movie. I'm just saying, like, I appreciate it. But yeah, here's a deep cut that I've shown to people. I remember showing this to Amanda, and she was like, "Okay," and I'm like, "This movie's hilarious. You shut up." There's a film called Brain Donors, and there's not a lot of celebrities in it. The mom from The Sopranos is in it, but John Turturro, is that? Yeah, this is his first name, right?
I think so.
He's probably the biggest lead, and it's a tribute to the Marx Brothers. I think it was in like the late '80s, might have been early '90s, and it's about these classic Marx Brothers setup where there's three guys. They find a young ingenue who has a boyfriend, and she's in some problem. And in this case, it's these dancers that want to be recognized by this company, and this wealthy socialite who owns this ballet company, and like it's like bequeathed to her from her husband, and so she wants to make this big show. And so they put on this big ballet at the end, and of course these three guys sabotage because they get like screwed over by this company. And I love it because it's why I like Clue. I don't know if you're a fan of movie Clue, because the writing is so sharp and so quick, and like there's so many jokes that's like, if you don't get this, it's like, I thought Men Like You were called a fruit. Very funny. Like these little like dry bits of humor. And Brain Donors is a lot of that. Like, and so it's like there's not one joke that's funnier than any other. They're just so fast and so like ridiculous, and they really do a great job of separating the three characters. One is actually this comedian named Bob Nelson, who people might have recognized. Again, it's just like this guy, somebody who was prominent like in the 80s, but he did a lot of prop humor. And so you have John Turturro, who's like the motor mouth. He's the lead. He's the Groucho. And then this one character who's a taxi driver, and he's just this kind of like unassuming, down for anything, but has a little more kind of a gruff expression. And so he'll kind of be the last joke in any given scene. And then Bob Nelson, who's like a mute most of the time, but is always pulling like weird devices out of his like trench coat and just making like a lot of like doing a lot of mime work and stuff. And it's just so absurd. Like one example of a really horrible joke that just cracks me up is they're in prison, and the two dancers, the couple, show up and they get them out of prison, and he says he's like, I used my severance to get you out of here. And they're like, you have servants? And then he says, the boyfriend is like, he's like, this whole thing is my fault, which is like such a common thing to have in a drama. And like the response you're expecting is them to be like, no, it's not your fault. And Bob Nelson goes, so it's your fault. And he like lunges at his neck, and the three guys are like, no. They like push him back. And it's just a lot of really dumb jokes like that, but they don't, like when you see something like Ace Ventura or Mike Myers or Adam Sandler, like the pause for the laugh is so long and excruciating that they're like, people are going to find this funny for hours. And you're just like, please. A lot of Marvel movies do that really well. They'll have like a funny joke. If you got it, great. If you didn't, moving on.
Yep.
And it has a lot of that attitude where it's just like, there's a lot of great sight gags. And I've played it for people, you play a comedy that you want people to like, and they just don't laugh. And you're like, well, screw you then. Fine.
That sounds really jolly. I want to come watch this. I want to come see this thing.
Brain Donors, not on DVD. I have a VHS copy of it, and that's it. I wonder if you can get it on Amazon. I wonder if you can like rent it for a couple bucks.
I would imagine.
Brain Donors.
Brain Donors, everyone. That's our recommendation for the week. Okay, cool.
Who does your hair, and when are they bringing it back? That is a line I use a lot for old people that always slays every time with anyone who's balding. Who does your hair, and when are they bringing it back?
That's pretty good. That's good. I like it. I guess for me, quickly, I would probably say Kung Pao Under the Fist. I don't know if you've seen that. I've had people say like
all
to
these
me,
comedies.
it's all these weird comedies, but they're like, Jimmy, is it racially insensitive? And I'm like, I mean, probably. And that's the thing is, it is a movie that some people took and they basically edited themselves into it to make it ridiculous, even more so than it already was. And there are some just real good gags in there that I just can't. Like, I was crying in the theater. I couldn't, and this is like, I was pretty young. It was like one of my first PG-13 movies, and I was just like, this is incredible. Like, oh my gosh. And to me, it'll always hold up because it's just the dumbest freaking thing, and I love it so much. Just like, Kung Pao. I recommend you check it out, but again, it would not fly Like it
Oh
wouldn't be in
no.
movie theaters today.
Well, I brought up Ace Ventura and Biodome. Biodome is incredibly sexist, and Ace Ventura is incredibly offensive to the transgender community. And so it's like, you know, like in our era, you look back at a lot of 80s and 90s comedy, and you're just like, oh, Rush Hour, talk about offensive. Oh my God, that trilogy. You know, but it's hilarious. Like I love Jackie Chan and I love Chris Tucker, and there's some really, really funny moments, but there's just some really just, you know, ear bleeding moments as well.
Yeah.
But what are you gonna do? It's the time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're gonna make another Bad Boys because that's just a classic. Everybody could watch it. Not weird or bad or anything weird like that. Yeah, Ace Ventura. Man. Weirdly though, Ace Ventura 2, I've always thought was like even better because I feel like they just step back and they're like, let's let our foot off the tiger's throat a little bit more so, and instead of having some weird ending where it's like the man was a woman or the woman was a man, now it's just like we're gonna try to birth Jim Carrey from a rhinoceros. You know, like it's like, oh, okay. Like let's do a slinky bit on these stairs, and you're like, let's do this. That movie. Oh man,
I love the Jeep at the end, man, when he's like Arthur from the consulate, right? This is weird. When he's like in this huge like Bigfoot just bombing through the jungle, like.
That's man.
It's a good bit.
Yeah, that's unapologetically loving stuff. All right, so we have a few people here. On Twitter at Look a Person, she says the third Harry Potter movie. She watched it before she read the book, but she still loves it. There you go.
That's the best.
Yeah, you like that one the best? I like the fourth one.
Yeah, they hold up. I rewatched Deathly Hallows 1 and 2, and those were great. They did a good job wrapping that up, I think. I get nitpicky about like I like that moment, and they didn't do it, but you know you can't win those battles. But 3 was just this great intersection of we've gotten the exposition out of the way, and we haven't gotten to the really difficult stuff yet. We have this story that there's enough freedom within the major story beats to thread it in a way that it can kind of exist on its own. And that's why I think like Quran really came in and was like, whatever kind of holes exist, you think about like deconstructing a person and then making them toddler sized, you know, where you kind of have to like take some bones out and some muscle, you know, it's a really sticky operation whenever you're translating a book to a film. And so I think the way he did it, like all of these little, it's kind of like the sequencing and the DNA in Jurassic Park, where he like, you have to put toad DNA in there. Like the Quran DNA, I think like made it better, where in a lot of other movies, like there was just too much for them to do. So you have these moments of like the monster yelling at the lady in the inn where she's like, you know, do you want some tea? Or I can't remember. Do you want me to clean your room? And like, or like just the guy like moving his finger around and stirring his coffee, you know, like these little tiny magical moments. Yeah, my wife is the biggest Harry Potter fan I've ever met in my life, and she's like, you know, that movie is it. He actually is not a big fan of the movies overall. So whenever like a lot of, I learned early on in our relationship, the movie merchandise not a good in as far as like birthdays and Christmas stuff is concerned. I remember we got the Honeydukes jar from one of the air, and she like was gonna throw it out or like recycle it, and I was like, we'll put candy in the Honeydukes jar. How perfect is that? And she's like, yeah, it's a movie thing though. Like I'd rather have like a friend of hers made her a Ravenclaw mug that she made. She actually like you know, baked it in an oven, and you know, like she does pottery, and she's like, this means way more to me than any official tie or scarf or blanket or, you know, pillowcase or anything else I could have. She's like, I would much rather have something on Etsy than something like, you know, $300 official, you know, Triwizard Tournament cup or whatever.
Sure. Oh, that's cool. Cool. Nice. All right. Well, see, I like the fourth one. His hair is too big though. The third one, my biggest problem is that it's not necessarily the direction of that movie. It's just the time turner. It's too many questions. I get too many questions when I want to see that thing. I'm like, come on now. We gotta, I don't know. That's just me. That's just
okay.
Me.
We got to make a list, man. So we got book 3, and what was the other one? Bloodborne. We got to have that Bloodborne talk.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I really want to deep dive on these, man. These are really great.
I want to do, like, I'm not joking, because oh man, and I got years stored up, baby. It's just like the venom sacs in this viper. I'm just like ready, and it's not like supposed to be like I'm gonna attack it and crush this game for me, because I beat the game. Well, I mean, like I didn't go freaking Chalice dungeons or whatever. But yeah, I could definitely, and I love Ian. Ian, like out of all the allies, is not the one I thought I would connect with the most, but I've spent some time with him, and we've done like, you know, videos and stuff together, and I absolutely adore him. But I would not hesitate to, like, if he really was like, hey, do you want to talk about this? Because like I think he would be like the guy that would be on the opposite end of it. And I'd be like, you know what? I still love you, but we can just disagree on this.
And you want to debate with people to strengthen your own argument. It's the same
exactly,
as it's the same when you're like discussing politics or talking about art. Like I don't want to prove you wrong, or I know a lot of people do, but like the way I approach it is like, I don't want you to feel ashamed for your words and deeds. I want to further be confident in the way that I, and the decisions that I want to make and the stuff I believe. And so, yeah, even when you have that impasse, it's just like, okay, well, as long as you didn't bring up something that I'm like, oh, damn, you're right. There is that flaw, or there is that thing I just overlooked and didn't think about comparison wise.
And it's a greater understanding of everything. Like you said, figuring that stuff out. But then also it helps that he's a big Disney fan, like both of us are. So we could just kind of fall back to that position of being like, yeah, but Disney's pretty great though, right? Like that's why I feel
that's
like
how you got to end it. Yeah. Whenever you have a debate, then you just, okay, but let me just, put a little aperitif on there,
exactly.
Something that we enjoy. So, okay.
I love it.
About that.
Yes, quickly run through these quick. Katie Bronson, my sister, our community manager, she says movie is Wedding Crashers. I understand that one.
Sure.
Yeah, Wedding Crashers is good. You guys couldn't see it, but Brandon was waiting, Katie. And then she says game Harvest Moon, really any platform. Favorite was N64 though. And it's really funny because we went back to play that recently, and I think the problem was we had a save that was too far in, and she was kind of bored because she was like, this is dumb because I've already accomplished everything. Like this isn't fun for me because you have to start from like nothing and like claw your way to having a greenhouse, and then you're like, like there's that moment you're like,
Harvest Moon is a series that I bet I would have loved. I think it's too late for me. But
yeah, Animal Crossing is kind of like a new age version, but you would love it. You would love it. You just can't have two. You can't be like I'm managing multiple. Right. Simon says movie Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, my favorite of the three, and I watch the trilogy at least once a year. That's a good person. He said game is Endless Ocean 2 for the Wii. A calmer and more relaxing game does not exist.
Fellowship is the best. That is a correct statement.
Oh my goodness. To me, Brandon, I cheat. I just call them all one big freaking movie together.
Stop it. Stop it.
I know. Lord of the Rings is really honestly my favorite. Like those are my favorite films, bar none. I'm emotionally attached.
They're really special. I rewatched Return the other day, or Two Towers and Return, just went straight through because I can't remember who had it. HBO had it or something, but like Netflix got Fellowship. I think Fellowship is still on Netflix, but not Two Towers and Return. Like and that was I got to the edge of that cliff and was like, oh, come on, Netflix. Well, there's no point. What's the point of getting Fellowship? When Return ends, it just waterworks.
I was like, does it make you cry too? Because it makes me cry.
Niagara Falls, yeah.
I always tell people this, Brandon. It makes me cry when Aragorn turns around at the Black Gate, and you're like, what's he gonna say? And he says, for Frodo, and then he charges off, and I'm like, that's the leader I want to be, man. I want to be that guy who's like not forgotten the purpose of this. It's not because he's the king and he's gonna save the whole day. He's like, I might die for this, but it's for the good of everybody, and don't forget why we started this mission. It's like, yes.
I melt into a puddle every single time when Pippin's like, I'm terrified, and Gandalf turns to him and he's like, that's not so bad. And Pippin's like, what do you mean? And he's like, what's there? And he describes it like, I cannot. It's like the first 8 minutes of Up. I cannot watch it without
so good
crying. Like I can't, because it's just such a great comment on mortality, and I think one of Ian McKellen's best moments, and just great to take a breather during that moment, during the siege, because like I think when you do battles in so many other movies, like it's just kind of one note the whole time, and that note is building, which is exciting, but it's just so great to have the multiple stages of that fight, moving from not Minas Tirith, but the town like in between Minas Tirith and Mordor. Yes, when they lose that, and then they go back to try to retake it, and then it's when Gandalf goes out with the staff, and it's just all this like building to get up to that point. Not to mention all the stuff going on with the regent, or with
Denethor
and his sons, and so
my God,
all the conflict and the way that they're juggling all of it, and the scene with Pippin at night, where they're seeing the big green spire of light like coming from Mordor, like the sense of scale that you get from like where they are and where Frodo is and where Sauron is, and so good.
Do you watch the extended editions?
Dude, only seen Fellowship. I need to correct that. I've just never.
Brandon, I'm coming right now. I
need to see Two Towers and Return.
There's really cool stuff in there, and the biggest thing is in Two Towers there is an extended sequence of Faramir Boromir and Denethor and their relationship together, and you see the three of
Cool.
them work together, and kind of like Faramir feeling like, because Boromir's like, I'm proud I took Osgiliath, and
Yeah.
Faramir's like, crap, I'm never gonna be that guy. My dad's never gonna love me, and there's just so much of that in there. It's like, I know why it's on the cutting room floor, but I'm so glad you brought it back because it's so good. It's like, one day if you can, please check it out. Sorry. Anyway, Brad says, or at Tukes on the old Twitter, says Zelda 2, don't at him. Zelda 2.
Oh, yeah. Zelda 2, I had more experience on the NES era than the original.
Yeah.
I think it was just more linear. I think it was easier to figure out like where to go, where like a lot of Zelda was. I mean, as much as I love open world games, you think I would have taken to that at an early age. But yeah, didn't really get into that for Zelda, and didn't get into Link to the Past. But like 2, I remember getting all the way to the end and I couldn't beat it. My brother and I were just like, the last couple fights you got to do in Zelda 2 are brutal.
Okay, fair enough. I haven't played those ones. I'm a huge open world fan too, but it's more of like when it got to 3D. That was N6. I was an N64 kid. I was spoiled. Ryan, he says movie is Back to the Future 2. We're talking about that. I love it. And then game is Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Oh, Wind Waker. That's a good one too. That's a good one too. Meekin on movies says Murdered Soul Suspect. I looked that up. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this game.
Oh yeah. Huber's a big fan of that one, Swimming in Sevens.
Yeah, and Missile Mage comes in, which, by the way, he told me to give you an old yeehaw before, and I forgot to do it. But he said game is Final Fantasy VIII. Yes, it has its faults and all, but it's my darling, and I love it to bits. Extra shout out for Road Trip Adventure. He said movie is Brave, maybe because I'm Scottish, but I feel it's underrated as a movie, which is interesting because that was a Walt Disney, like they pulled that, like his notes for that or something, like that was a long time ago that he wanted to do Brave or something like that. It's interesting. If you go back and try to find the history on Brave, it's interesting. Yeah, it was like, they're kind of in that company. They're always looking for that.
Just like we were talking about, great examples. Not a big fan of 8, not a big fan of Brave. More power to you.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just
loving those things, especially when somebody says something's their darling. It's like you can't take that away from somebody. That's so awesome that you have that connection, especially to a Final Fantasy, man. The way we love those, like if any one of those games really spoke to you, and like 6 and 9 are just will always be my 4 is great, 10's great.
10.
12 is really fun. I had a lot of fun with 12, but it's just 6 and 9. There's just something, they're so special.
Well, it just feels like a slap in the face nowadays. They're like, hey, guess what's coming to Switch? They're like 7, 9, 10, 10, 2. And you're like, whoa. They're like, it's okay. We don't want to talk about 8. And people joke about putting like they're like, I love having FF8 on my PS4, and they just put the physical copy on top of a PlayStation 4. And it's like, I don't know. I get it. It's weird. But yeah. Well, okay, let's wrap up with a question or two here. And this comes in from Mr. Mage because I wanted to ask you about this. It's about Dreams, Brandon, because you brought it up earlier. He said, I'm really looking forward to Dreams, with hopefully a beta coming this year. Is there a particular part of Dreams that you are particularly looking forward to, Mr. Jones?
Music.
There he goes.
Yeah, the idea of creating a score to a game, or even just like a level, completely from scratch. I think that's just fascinating, because I think a lot of music, like I remember, I think music was my favorite part of Mario Paint. I remember just going nuts with Mario Paint back in the day on the Super Nintendo, and making different and there's still people today that are making just all sorts of crazy, the Game of Thrones theme, and crazy compositions. But when you listen to something from Mario Paint, it's clearly Mario Paint. And I think a lot of the audio creators, like, I don't know if you got into Infinity, but they in 3.0 had their weird music. You could lay out like keyboards and have, you could really orchestrate some crazy stuff. And it was nuts, like going into worlds and there was music not available in Infinity that then people wrote. And I was like, oh, and it like never quite sounded right. And so I think everything you have with music is kind of limited to the resources available in that game. But I think you could easily make something in Dreams, play it for somebody, and have them be like, cool, how'd you produce that? And you're like, I made it in Dreams. You wouldn't be like, oh, that's clearly the Dreams saxophone. Like, I think the range is so much wider as far as what you can produce in that game. And it's just fascinating to think of just from the ground up, just kind of looking at a character, looking at a level, or thinking of a concept and being like, what would that sound like? Like, what kind of pace of music would I want to listen to? And it's just nuts. I build a lot of crazy worlds in games, but I've never thought of that before. So it's like, that's kind of a fun frontier to start exploring and do horribly at first, but then hopefully get better at.
Sure. I feel like this is on me at this point, but like I hope that these guys represent the Disney Infinity love just a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, I loved Disney Infinity, and I too was hurt when that went down, but maybe Dreams kind of will scratch that itch in a different way.
Oh yeah.
And I know you talk about Disney Infinity a lot, but like the fact that we have Captain America and Darth Vader looking kind of in the same kind of animated zone, like how cool, like incredible, right? Like But yeah, dreams is such an interesting beast because I think like a lot of times people are either immediately scared off of something like this, or there's just like you want to just dive right in and just like have nothing else for like a month and be like dreams. Like you just like I'm just gonna figure out every little thing. Because I remember getting into a little bit of Little Big Planet and thinking like, oh man, like I attach this to this and this and this and this, and like hoping that it will work. And I'm thinking that dreams that it's a bit more sophisticated, that I won't maybe have those types of problems. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Is hopefully like refinement, because that was kind of an issue for me.
I think that it's gonna be interesting to see launch dreams, conversations, advertising, discussions, analysis, and then post-launch, because I think leading up to launch, they're going to talk about creation a lot. They're going to talk about the tools that you have, the stuff that you can do, because it's exciting and they want to keep talking about the game. And there's just kind of really like digging deep to be like, what haven't we talked about? How can we continue the conversation going for dreams without like even coming close to mentioning a release date?
Yeah.
And then I think once people finally get their hands on it, they're going to be talking a lot less about creation and more about actually playing levels, like just how quickly you can just jump from thing to thing to thing to thing, creation to creation to creation. And then people are going to start tweeting out, did you play this weird thing? And then thinking, well, I'm not going to make my own thing, but that was kind of fun. I wonder if I could just make that environment red, or take this dude out, or make this guy a little taller. And then people are going to start tweaking with already created things and not necessarily like feeling that stress, because it is game development at the end of the day. Like these things are not going to make itself. Like you do have to put in a lot of time. And so I think I could see the vast majority of people playing dreams having no patience for that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But the hope is you have enough of a community that's doing weird stuff that even if you play it, you buy it, you play it for a couple weeks and you're like, that was fun. 8 months later, you're like, oh, let me jump back in and see what's been going on in this weird community.
Yeah, I love doing that with Disney Infinity, because it was like I go back in and be like, oh, someone made like a Pirates of the Caribbean or something like that. And I'm like, oh, cool, I want to see what their version of it is, because like I'd make a level. I made like a Hulk bus out of like an underground laboratory, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. But then I'd look at these other things. I was like, these are incredible. Someone made like Snow White's Scary Adventures like in the game, and I'm like, you made a ride that's like shot for shot, like one for one of this. I'm like,
yep.
You guys, like, you're killing me. And I'm like, this, and the way that they were like so intelligent with the limited resources that they sometimes had, like you're talking about the music, or just kind of putting in little things to make it look like the dwarves were there or something. But like this game, you can just do it. Like it's not like, oh, we don't like this, the resources aren't as limited, but hopefully it's refined too. So I know I'm asking for a lot there, but that's kind of what you want, right? Right. I
had a crazy, mind-blowing thought about dreams the other day. I was talking with a friend about it, and I thought of, because there's a couple projects that I know I want to do. So I'm like already thinking about them in my head, and like, what are my first steps going to be when I do it? And I had one thought the other day where it's like, well, if I'm building a world, how do I compare sizes of people? So if I'm making characters, how do I make sure they're all the same height? And then I'm like, well, I could really load them into any sort of environment. So then I could have a table or have a space, or even just have them be like hanging in air, because this game's going to be in VR at launch. So I'll be in PSVR with these things in front of me. And it'd be neat to, like, if I want to create like Daniel Bloodworth, to like be able to import an image of him and have that in VR and look at it, like as I'm designing something. And then I was like, wait a minute, I can make like Geppetto's Workshop and like not only create a level for you to enjoy, this is just for me. Like this is just the environment I want to be in when I'm making these things. So you imagine you can have some cool sci-fi or fantasy, or even just kind of ethereal or very realistic. Like you could be on a construction site on a big skyscraper or something, and like that can be where you choose to be when you're just kind of like VR is slowly starting to do now. Like Oculus and Vive both have their like home bases where you can like be in an area, but it's mostly just to absorb. You're like, oh, this is my apartment, but like all I really do here is look at a menu and pick games I want to play, or like see who's online, or maybe watch videos or something. So to be actually interactive, where it's like, I don't like the color of that table or anything, like just you can point at anything in the environment and make it whatever you want. And so just be cool if someone's like, hey, I made the deck from Mass Effect 2, if you want to just like use that as your hangout zone. It's crazy to think of how deep that goes. And the idea of creating environments for so many different purposes other than just like play this, it's like, no, it's for me. I don't make that for anybody else.
Yeah, that's real. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. The first that popped in mind, I was like, do I want it to be like a Tony Stark lab, or do I want it to be like Mount Doom Forge? Like
the Batcave.
The Batcave's really. We already have the VR version of it, so just kind of go back to Batman VR, be like, and then you have two PSVRs, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we got it. No, I bet you could create that however you'd like. That would be great. Oh, the Batcave would be. Brandon, I think you got it. That just mixed both the things I had. Well done, sir. That was well done. I was like, that's you figured it out.
Yeah, I try not to think about dreams because then I just get giddy. I just start to get tingles.
All right.
I'm so excited.
Well,
so
then
I try to just
no more thinking about
it'll happen
dreams.
when it happens.
Yeah, exactly. You can't think about it. Just last question here. And this was kind of an interesting one. I thought that would be fun. So this comes in from our friend Natalie over on Discord, but she says, "What is your favorite non-classic / not retro old game? So it has to be at least 5 years old, but it can't be like 16-bit era. It has to be like GameCube era and up, sort of in there between GameCube and." Right at the beginnings of the Xbox One, PS4. Do you have one? I know it's kind of tricky.
Yeah. Well, here's a random one, but it's on the PlayStation Classic. Is Jumping Flash. I love Jumping Flash 1 and 2.
I'm not familiar with it.
They're both on PlayStation. They are first-person platformers, which is like gross. It's like not 2 words you want put together, or 3 words technically, but like you just don't want first person and platforming to ever get near each other. And this is the entire game.
Okay.
But you're inside of a robot rabbit, and you have a double jump. And so it's just like looking around this environment and finding these different things. You have to find a certain amount of, you have like a time limit, and you have to find these like little bunny rabbits. And there's like, of course, bonuses, and you can like find weapons and shoot them from first person. And it was just the first, it's kind of one of those things that I'm sure like there's no wow factor whatsoever with it now. The draw distance is awful, and the textures like don't hold up, and it's kind of chaotic, and the control can be really frustrating if you're like trying to land on platforms and stuff. But just being in from that Ocarina of Time, era, the Twisted Metal, being inside of a car like for the first time, like there's just I remember these moments of like the looking around an environment from my own eyeballs was just like so crazy. And I was not a big PC guy, so like I didn't play Wolfenstein, I didn't play Doom, I didn't play Quake, and like there were a lot of first person games I missed out on. So it was really through consoles that I was like, wow, Mario 64, just like, whoa, like look at these crazy worlds that you can examine from so many angles. And that was just one of the first, that feeling of first person, like jumping off of something and then falling a really great distance and seeing the ground come up at you. Like you never forget your first time. And that was like definitely one of the first
I love
times
it.
I'd ever done that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's a good pick.
So yeah, if you're guaranteed to buy that PlayStation Classic, do not skip that one. That one's fun.
Flash. Gotcha. Okay. Good to know. Now we know that one's on there. For me, I was trying to think about this. I wanted like a more clever answer, but really, and this is just because it's got a nostalgia factor for me, but Gears of War 3, it brought my family together in a way that the Gears franchise somehow did. For people who don't know, Brandon, you probably don't know this either. I have 3 sisters, and 2 of them were not really into games so much. And Gears of War really lends itself to people who aren't interested in like a really difficult or immersive experience. It's like you get in cover, you aim at people. If you know how to move around, you're doing pretty well. And so Horde mode kind of brought some of us together in 2, but then 3 is where it really hit a fever pitch. And I remember it was finals week during the time that Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol was coming out. And I was playing with my brother-in-law, and if you beat the game on insane mode, you got these special skins that I think you could probably just buy, or you could get, other ways nowadays. But like back then, it was like you had to earn it. So like we were up super late, and he would get up and work at like 5 a.m, but I keep him up till 2 or whatever, and I'd have him on Skype on my little computer. And when he would like die, I'd be like, "What happened?" And he'd be like sleeping, and I was like, "What's going on?" Like I was like, "We gotta do this." So like we just committed time to beating that game on insane mode and like memorizing spawn points for things, and we're like, 2 guys are gonna drop down here, plant grenades right here. So like it was like Edge of Tomorrow, if you guys have ever seen that movie with Tom Cruise where he keeps dying and come back. So we were like, we knew the future. Like we're like, they're gonna die. It was like boom, 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 and it was just like boom, boom. Like it felt kind of cool, but also like you earned it.
Sure.
And I loved that game. It was the culmination of that franchise, at least for me at that point. And I don't know if it's ever gonna hit that again, because it kind of moved from like this kind of creepy horror thing in the first game, more of a blockbuster in the second. Third one was like, oh, like huge, crazy, over the top, the whole world ending thing. And I really enjoyed that game. There were so many cool things in it. I loved rushing up with my retro lancer and stabbing someone and throwing him over my shoulder. And I was like, oh yes. And just like jumping over cover and knocking a dude down and shooting him was just, a real pleasure. Except I do like the knife play in Gears 4, and Judgment was like DLC. They shouldn't have made that a whole game. It was just like, what are you thinking? But yeah, so I love Gears of War 3. That's my non-old retro game that fits in that bracket of time. I think is my favorite. Yeah. Which I know a lot of people are like, Gears of War is like for bros and stuff. I was like, no, it's a lot more sci-fi and a lot like they look like they are bros. You're like, there's a lot more to those games, and there's a lot more.
We talked about Double Agent being one of your first 360 games, and Gears, the first Gears for me was like, welcome to this generation. Like, there were just some environments I walked in, I was like, I cannot believe how good some of this stuff looks.
Yep.
Here we go.
I remember seeing it at a buddy's house, and he like chainsawed through a wretch, and I remember being kind of apprehensive at first. I'm like, what the heck is this game? So dark and scary. And then I was like, and you get someone to chainsaw through one thing once in those games, because people like from a distance, they're like, that's disgusting. How can you do that? And they do it once, and they're like, I want to do that again. And you're like, don't you? Like, he's like running around, he's like, just like making mincemeat of things, and it just feels so good, just so tactile. Man, I love it. Also, some really good voice actors in that game too. There's some really good talent in that game. I think it's John DiMaggio? Yeah, he's the guy who does Marcus Phoenix. He also does like, Bender and Jake and like all these, Jake the dog and all these other people. But I just love him as Marcus Phoenix. Just, that's a goddamn Leviathan. It's just like, yeah, so funny to me. Anyway, there you go. But believe it or not, I think that's going to do it for today, Brandon, because like we've just been going on and on. It's been great. I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I could do this all day. Yeah. Yes, I could too. And I don't, that doesn't happen with everybody. So it's a real freaking treat for me. But if anybody watching this ever has a question, thank you. That'll save me for weeks. If you ever have a question or a topic for the show, all you have to do is tweet the hashtag Critical Podcast. You can tweet at our official account on Twitter, which is @GoCritical. That is a capital G and a capital C. Or you can tweet at me personally. I'm at JimmyGood013. However, if you want to just tweet at Brandon, you want to tweet him a question, tweet him something nice, tweet him anything really. Brandon, where can people find you? You can follow me at Trailer Jones on Twitter, and of course at Easy Allies is an account that I check as well. If you would like to contact us about anything. Exactly. Which I want to get into that, because usually this is part of the show where I talk about, we've got people who make this show happen, like our theme music from this Daylib and our art from Yoran Evers, which you should definitely check those guys out. And we do have a Patreon. But this week, dear viewer, please listen to me right now. If you want to support anyone this week, please consider donating to the Easy Allies. I've been a patron for a long time. I am definitely not like their top tier patron, except once in a while someone will surprise me and make me a sponsor, which that'll make your heart stop. And it's just like, hey, you're a sponsor, and I'm like, oh, what? Like, it's great, thank you. But Game Trailers was the impetus for Critical Reviews. We started a year before you guys closed, I think it was, and I remember just being kind of like, man, like it was a gut punch. And I remember seeing these other people talk about like, hey man, if you use ad blocker, if you didn't do this or that, it's like, that's why, like, it's your fault. And I was like, yeah. And then when Easy Allies came, I was like, here they are, they're back, baby. They stole my font and my colors, but they're back. And I was so excited because these guys are, seriously, these guys are the people who inspired us to do what we're doing here today. They're one of the groups, and I would say they're the most influential group of them all. I will never ever forget hearing you, Brandon, read off a little blurb of mine for Final Fantasy 15 back at Game Trailers, and I was just like, oh my god, they read this thing. I was like showing it to everyone. I was like, look at this guy read this thing, and I was like, there are people like, oh, that's good for you. And I was like, this is amazing. So please, if you could donate even $1, if you're already donating $1, I'd recommend donating $2. And if you can't donate any more money to them over at patreon.com/easyallies, share them with a friend. Share them on Facebook. Just take a link from anything they do, any of their reviews, the Red Dead review, the Spider-Man review, any of their podcasts. Just share it somewhere with someone, because you guys have no idea how much that helps and how much of a domino effect that can create. And if you're unfamiliar with what they do, Brandon, I don't want to take this away from you, but I feel like you talk about it all the time, so I want to do it for you, if you don't mind. I mean, Easy Allies, they do reviews. Go for it. Okay, good. They do reviews, they do previews, they do like a million podcasts. Seriously, there's so many. And it's good because you can pick and choose. You don't have to listen to all of them. And it's just a great group of guys, 9 gentlemen who just love games and movies and TV, and they talk about all this stuff. And they have various shows, so many different things. You've got things on one end where it's, you know, Michael Huber, this really explosive and very warm individual standing in front of a green screen screaming every week. And then on the other end, you've got Kyle Bossman making this thing called Box Peak, where it's these paper puppets, and they're doing this anime sort of thing where you've got all the voices of the allies, and even Brandon, your lovely wife, who does a freaking killer job as the main protagonist, Jordy. And I love it so freaking much. Like, it's just brings everything up a notch. I'm like, this is such a realized character. And I listen to their stuff constantly. They are the soundtrack to my life. I'm not joshing you guys. Like, it's just, I'm like, oh cool, another Frame Trap's up. It's 3.5 hours, perfect, that'll get me through the week. And so I just like have it just kind of on. I'll just have it on while I'm doing work and stuff. It's like, I'm just like, and these are the guys like we want to be like them someday. So if you want to see the future, you want to see the butterfly of this caterpillar, check them out, because that's what they are. I think I covered it all, Brandon. Do you think I covered it all?
I think you covered it all. Yeah, that's yeah, no, that makes me feel good. That's good to hear. And I love, you know, chatting with you and getting to know your community, you know, seeing the synergy between our communities. And just like you were saying, like, if you were inspired by the work that we did at Game Trailers, like, I'm inspired by just anybody, any type of group that we meet in this industry. And it's really fun to see. Like, I really got to know the guys from Screw Attack like very early in their life. And so it's just great to see like who they've influenced and how much we've learned from them and how they've coexisted and how their companies branched off in so many different directions. And so it's fun. It's fun to like be at a company for a really long time. It's fun to start new companies. It's fun to just make friends and know them for years and years. And so, so stoked that we can finally sit down and chat. I mean, we chatted a lot, but it's fun to like do it officially. Well, I know people are just dying for my Disneyland opinions. It's good to finally get them out.
You got them out there
for so long.
It feels good, yeah. Because I talk about it like occasionally here, but I was on a trip down to Florida recently, and like I feel like that just like opened up the doors for me, where I'm like, you know what, everybody, I know we're talking about everything in entertainment. I just want to talk about Disney. Okay, we're gonna talk about Disney for a little bit here. There's timestamps, you could skip it if you want to, if you don't listen to me talk about it for an hour, but it's gonna happen, all right? Because I freaking love it. And a lot of people who love Disney love video games too. There's a lot of beautiful crossover there. I love it so much. Like the Void. God, I love that Void. Oh man, I want to go do that again so badly. I was just, yeah, it was a good time. Anyway, please go check them out. They're at easyallies.com and patreon.com/easyallies. And they also, not only do they have one channel, which is like their typical one, it's Easy Allies, but Easy Allies Plays, if you like streams and stuff, they do streams on Twitch, but then that goes over to that channel too. So if you miss a stream or want to watch something like that, definitely check it out. I highly recommend checking out the group streams because those are some of the most fun ones. And I will recommend the Pokemon tournaments. I'm not a huge fan of the Pokemon card game, but I freaking love watching those card tournaments. It's just like ridiculous. I'm like, what's even happening here? And they're just like, oh, I've got the energy, I'm doing my attacks. I'm like, cool. Yeah. So definitely check those out. But anyway, there's my long diatribe of why you should go check them out. Brandon, thank you so much. And an honor, a pleasure. I can't, like, I've just been dreaming of this day. So thank you for making that dream a reality. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, so anytime. And for everybody watching, thank you for joining us. And just remember to adapt and overcome. We'll see you next time. Bye.